All right, good evening, everyone. We're live once again from the Donatorium for another episode of The Fat Minute. Joined tonight by my co-host, BVJ.
Hello.
And returning guest, Tate Griffin.
I'm returning.
Came back to the Donatorium even though he swore he would never do it again.
The Donatorium.
And I'm, of course, your host, Don John.
Funny enough, the Donatorium was actually one of the San Francisco bathhouses they closed in 1981.
That's a little blurb that I have on a plaque in my living room. So tonight we got a bit of a controversial hot topic episode. Tonight we're going to talk about cancel culture, PC culture, all that fun stuff. So it's going to be an open discussion tonight. And I got a few different examples we're going to talk about. But first, let's just start with our general thoughts on what cancel culture and PC culture is and how we feel about it.
I mean, first of all, let me just say that I'm really, really glad that we have so much diversity with two straight white guys and Donnie in this conversation. That's...
Oh, no. Yeah, no. That is my first thought of the night. I'm like, because really, this is what the internet has been crying for. Another podcast with three white guys talking about cancel culture.
Damn it, we're not been canceling shit.
Three straight white men talking about cancel culture. Like, this is what the internet is crying for.
Yeah, or about.
I think you're right, Tate.
Well, let's move on. I have a career to ruin.
Mine or yours?
Yeah, just more than one. Let's see.
All right, well, Blake, what do you guys say? Like, any general thoughts?
I don't about what?
Let me say this. My guess is that you guys are fairly liberal. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah.
Yes.
I've been told that I'm criminally liberal. That said, I think there might be some surprises on this particular topic. I think we might actually have some dish here, some dirt, and some disagreements.
I think you have. I'm not sure what you are, Tate. So I'm going to allow you to maybe say what you are. Donnie would be, a progressive, student of Bernie Sanders, and I am a neoliberal corporate shill. I am a whipping boy in the DNC's pocket, I guess, as I've been told.
Okay, boomer.
Yeah, I think everybody in my house makes more money on paper than I do, and that includes my 16-year-old daughter. So there's nobody really fucking holding my feet to the fire. I'll say pretty much what I want.
Oh, we're gonna have a fun night. All right, well then let's go ahead and just jump into.
Let's go ahead and talk about Roseanne.
Yeah.
Okay. Here's my first thing.
Okay.
I think cancel culture is fine to a certain. I think it's all circumstantial and situational. I think it is just to a certain point. So I'll just start with that, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I can get behind that. Very case by case basis, and depends on the context. Like no two cases are alike.
I feel like every case is the same, and it should be across the board, no matter who's involved or what the circumstances are.
All right.
Not really. I'm just fucking with you guys.
All right. Well, then let's jump into our first example here.
Tate, are you talking? Do you have like headphones, or are you talking into a mic, or what are you talking into?
I'm talking into a phone.
Is there a way you're able to do like headphones you can talk into? I think I would have an easier time with that.
Well, I guess I could do headphones into my phone if I could get in a time machine and go to Radio Shack. I don't know. This is the first phone. This is how out of the loop I am on that type of shit. This is the first phone that you can't plug headphones in. They have to be Bluetooth. Does that matter?
Yeah, right. Well, tonight Well, tonight
We'll just fucking suffer through it till we cancel me.
We'll start a support fund to get Tate some decent headphones for 39 cents a day. That's less than a cup of coffee. You can support this man. Plus to get headphones.
And for an extra $1, his children will give him a hug.
I'll send you a picture.
All right. We're gonna move into the first instance that I want to talk about.
Example.
Yeah. We're gonna start with Kevin Hart, since I feel like he's kind of like the one that kind of kickstarted like the most recent like form of cancel culture, I guess.
Yeah.
So this was what
he was at least the one that divided the most people, I think.
Yeah, and this happened what, 2018?
2017 or 18, yeah.
Yeah, Kevin Hart, basically he was supposed to host the Emmys?
The Oscars.
The Oscars. Same difference. He was supposed to host the Oscars. What?
Go ahead, I'm just teasing.
Okay. Kevin Hart was supposed to host the Oscars, and then...
Hey, we're allowed to tease, right? We're allowed to tease and interrupt?
Yes.
Yeah, like, what the fuck am I doing here? Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Kevin Hart was supposed to host the Oscars, and then basically an old bit of his from like almost 10 years ago was started floating around the internet, where he made a joke about how he would beat his son if he found out his son was gay. And, you know, that caused a lot of backlash on him, causing him to not host the Oscars, to basically get fired from that job. And his response to it caused even more backlash in a lot of ways. I'm just going to throw it out there. You know, what are your guys' thoughts on that? Do you think Kevin Hart deserved the backlash? Do you think...
Well, you guys stop me where I'm wrong here, but as I understood it, those things came up after the fact. Now, back whenever he did it, people thought it was funny. I'm
Right.
sure there were people that were offended. Whatever. But then I believe that resurfaced before the whole Oscar thing. It resurfaced a couple years before that, and he apologized for it. Again, this is what I had heard, and I'd heard him say. I want to say it was like maybe 2015, 2016, 2017, sometime in there. He apologized for it because, you know, we all grow, we all evolve, we all, say things we regret. And I think the fact that he owned it and apologized and said, you know, hey, it was funny then, it's not now. Or the world changes and it was offensive. However it was put, bottom line was he apologized. So then it comes back up when he has this opportunity to host the Oscars, and they're basically like, oh, you got to go apologize again. And he refused. As I understood it, he basically said, look, I already apologized for this. You know, I'm not going to do it. Are we setting a precedent where every single time you have an opportunity to do something else, a big group of people get to bring this up and say this? And he's basically just said, you know, I already apologized for it. I'm not doing it. And I'm 100% in agreement with that. Fuck that. The guy said, you know, hey, okay, I did this, and, you know, it was something that was funny then. It offended people, and there was a bigger backlash. Looking back on it, it doesn't age well. I've said all kinds of shit that doesn't age well. I said something at lunch today that didn't age well. And until now, it was about McDonald's and how good it was. Anyway, my point is, you know, he has to apologize every day? He has to apologize every single time there's some new step in his career? And I think he was the one that actually said he wasn't going to do the Oscars, if I'm not mistaken. I didn't my finger on that, but I just remember that being my feeling.
That was ultimately his final say. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, okay.
It
is what it is.
I mean, I could be wrong, but I don't remember him like apologizing and then it coming up a second time. I only remember the Oscars coming up. That came up. And then he didn't apologize. He just went on saying, you know, people grow, people evolve. You guys think you know me, but you don't. But it's just like, is it really? And like he was doing that over and over again, just beating around, like just saying, I'm sorry, it was a joke that didn't age well.
Yeah.
That's what I remember happening. I mean,
see, that would be the crux of it then, because, you know, if that's the case, okay. But yeah, I want to say it was NPR that I was doing a story on it a couple years back, and him coming out and saying that, you know, this was already brought up. You know, that was the whole gist of what I had heard about it was, how many times is this going to be brought back up for me to apologize over again?
Yeah, if that was the case, I'm in 100% agreement with you. If he had already apologized, then yes, he did it. But I don't remember that happening at all. But I could be wrong.
Um, it was the fact that he expelled more time and energy and effort dancing around it instead of just doing it once more was what bothered people about it. It was the fact that, like, you don't have to pay for air. You don't have to pay for words. It would have taken him, of all the different interviews he did, he went on Ellen and he, talked about it online. He did stories, on like Snapchat or Instagram or whatever, of all the different things he did. All he had to do, I mean, in theory, all he had to do is just do it one more time. And he doubled down on it. He tripled down on it. And he almost gave off the impression that he regretted ever apologizing for it to begin with, if he did. I don't know.
I can't say I disagree with that. I mean, the fact of the matter is if he went on and said, look, and also, to be fair, I'm not so sure that it was necessarily. I'm not saying that I disagree. I'm saying I'm not sure that he needed to apologize. I think him expressing regret for saying it, or expressing like the feeling of, hey, this is something I thought was funny then, and it's, and a lot of people, by the way, a lot of other fucking people did. He was on he had a jetpack strapped to his ass the whole time. I mean, he was rising to fame, and that was a bit, and everybody, I'm not saying everybody, but it wasn't something that ruffled a lot of feathers back in 08 or 07 or whenever he said it. Yeah. So as the world changes and he comes back and said, people start bringing up, oh, wait a minute, what you said then was offensive in the world we live in to more people. I have no doubt there were people that were offended then. I'm just saying that, as it becomes a bigger backlash now, and he goes on these other shows and says, hey, I'm looking at these things and realizing that this was wrong. And what? I'm sorry to the people that I did offend. I'm sorry to the people that were bothered by it, and I see it and I regret doing it. And it's not something I'm going to do now. And I've learned from it. I mean, that was the gist of what he went on those talk shows for. And for them to come around and say, oh, you got to apologize one more time. Fuck you. That's where I'm at. Fuck that. Like, as soon as he did it again, like, and I hear you, Blake, I know you're saying it's like, oh, he only had to say it one more time and the amount of energy he put in here and here. But I think it sets a precedent. I think it sets a bad one. Yeah. And he's a comedian. And, there's a lot of folks that their big thing is, like, let's say, like the Second Amendment. That's their big thing. And that's cool. Mine is freedom of speech. You can say what the fuck you want. And, yeah, you got to answer for it, ultimately, but you're allowed to say what you want. And the fact that he can say what he wants as a comedian, he'd be like, if it's funny, I don't know. If it's funny, you should be able to say it and then take the consequences. And the fact that he said it, a bunch of people thought it was funny, and it took 10 years and social media and Twitter to cause this big backlash. And then he goes out and addresses it and expresses regret and apologizes to the people that were offended, for them to come back and go, oh, you need to do it one more time. Fuck you. That's my opinion.
Yeah, like I said, I don't remember it happening like that, but if it did, I'm in agreement with Tate. But, if he didn't do that first apology, then I'm more in agreement with Blake.
And I think that is a very fair point. I think that's a very fair, I guess, concern that he could have had was, every single time he was going to do another event or another project, he was going to have to talk about that one thing from 10 years ago that he already talked about before he got to talk about his new upcoming movie. It's like, oh, okay, we're going to do a new movie now. We're going to do a sequel to this or a sequel to that. It's like, oh, okay, great. I can't wait to talk about that after I once again talk about this other thing that I've already talked about. Like,
it's beating a dead horse.
Reliving it.
Well, and by avoiding setting that precedent, he also kind of reversed it, did a 180 and set a new precedent, and that was, he was the one that always said, well, I'm not going to do the Oscars. And it kind of let everybody else know moving forward with his projects, if you're going to try to call this shit out again after I've already addressed it, well, then I won't do that project. Yeah. I think he completely 180'd it, and he set the precedent.
I feel like this instance, this example is the trickiest one, because I mean, I guess spoiler alert, hopefully we'll get to talk about her, with Roseanne, it's like, yeah, there's not much debate to be said there. Like, she's a fucking asshole.
Yeah.
But with Kevin Hart, it was just about shit. It's so hard, and it's also so hard to talk about. But
and it's like,
oh, go ahead, Donnie. Go ahead.
It's like, obviously I don't know Kevin Hart personally, but do I think he hates gay people? No. Like, I don't get that vibe from him at all. I think he's a kind-hearted, good person. And I mean, as a comedian, I've said plenty of jokes that did not land well, which we'll hopefully get to talk about a little bit later. But, it's like, I agree with Tate in terms of the First Amendment. Like, you can say whatever the fuck you want. You're going to have to answer for it eventually, but yeah, say what you want. And I mean, again, I'm just repeating myself at this point, but
you have freedom of speech in the sense that nobody should go to jail or be harmed for words they say. You have freedom of speech, but you do not have freedom of consequences, and you also do not have the right to a platform. You can say whatever messed up joke you want to say, but guess what? I'm not going to buy a ticket to your fucking movie then. Like, I have the right to not go to your shit then.
I totally agree with that. I mean, that's ultimately your call. That's your choice. It's all of our choice. Yeah. And by the way, I'm not a Kevin Hart fan, by the way. Like, I don't buy his stuff. I don't watch his stuff. Like, I don't see a movie because he's in it. More often than not, I would probably avoid a movie because he's in it. I find him irritating. That said, he addressed it. Yeah, like you said, there's consequences. And I think that, I don't know the details of what consequences he meant in that whole situation, but I do know that he addressed it. And I'm not saying that makes it all better, but like, how long do we beat a dead horse?
Right.
Well, and then, I guess the point can be made, and obviously we know the difference between these two men, but I do believe Seth MacFarlane hosted the Oscars one year. Needless to say, there are a field of Family Guy jokes that did not age well since 1999.
Yeah,
sure.
But where was the trial there?
Right.
The trial of Seth MacFarlane there. And it was weird because ultimately it wasn't even that like he kept digging his hole deeper. He kept digging his hole wider in a way and opening up like different pathways to an attitude that then people had trouble with. Like, yes, we've been saying for the last several minutes, how many times can you apologize for something? But he was also at one point making out to be like that was just as much a great struggle as those who could have been hurt by his words. Like, oh, you think you're upset about what I said. Imagine how I feel that I had to talk about something more times than I wanted to talk about it. I just want to move past it. Well, yeah, I think the kid that, didn't want to get beat by his dad every day also wanted to move past it. I kind of regret that we started off with this one because this is a hard fucking one.
I think there's a slippery slope, though, when you start getting into that because, there's always, relatively speaking, there's always going to be something different.
Yeah.
There's always going to be something. I mean, that to me, that approach to it, that logic is similar to like the whole, I don't know, the Caitlyn Jenner thing. I'm saying, well, Caitlyn Jenner's brave, and then turn around and say, no, this is bravery. There could be more than one kind.
I remember that. You know what, Tate? I remember your post about that, and it was so good, and I was so glad you posted. And this was years ago, and I remember stuff like this. It sticks with me. And this was a trend, though. It wasn't just Caitlyn Jenner, but that was probably like for a lot of people the last straw because I remember there was this trend with like boomer women on Facebook where like Whitney Houston died, and basically they would share these posts where the moral was, yeah, well, you're upset that Whitney Houston, another celebrity, died. You know who else died? The troops. And it's like, okay. And it's like, oh, well, Caitlyn Jenner is brave for standing before a world in which, her acceptance isn't a given. And people are like, no, that's not brave. Chris Kyle was brave. And it's like, why does one person have to cancel out the other? Like,
Yeah.
Right. Like my daughter was brave the first day of preschool because she had to walk into a room full of people she didn't know. I mean, there's just different kinds. It's not negating one or the other.
Exactly.
But the other thing too, though, is he's telling this joke, and yeah, it's insensitive, and especially now, and yes, it could have upset and offended a lot of people, but he's also a comedian, and I'm ultimately going to always stand by the idea that you can tell a joke about anything. I mean, I just don't think any topic is off limits when it comes to telling a joke, as long as it's funny. I mean, you guys might part with me on that, but that's where I'm at.
No, I'm in the same boat. I think, no topic is off limits when you're in comedy, as long as you can make it funny. You and I, Tate, talk about all the time. You got to be more clever than mean.
Well, and the thing is when he said that, there was a whole shitload of people laughing. It was fucking funny. Does that make it right? Does that make it moral? Does that make it socially acceptable? Does it make it potentially dangerous? I mean, it could be all those things or none of those things. But there was a bunch of people that thought it was funny, and humor's subjective. That's where I get back to is I'm not saying that you can say anything you want under the guise of it being humor. I'm just saying that there should be no topic that's off limits when it comes to comedy, to stand-up specifically. I
mean, I think that's a very passionate counterpoint. And this is just a broader feeling I have in general. I personally, and this is all about personal preference. I'm not saying I should, be of the highest ruling in the land and make this law for everyone else, but I do personally think that there are just some things that just aren't funny, and there are some things you shouldn't joke about. I don't think other people deserve to have their livelihood taken away because I think death should not be joked about. I don't think you should make jokes about a person dying, but
really?
No, I don't. And there may have been times where I accidentally alluded to sarcasm about that. Like, of course, we all joke about an evil person or a terrible person maybe finally meeting their end, but it's just something with me where I have never thought it was funny for the most part.
Well, and here's the thing: is there's a correlation, or there's definitely a distinction there. It's something you don't find funny, or something you don't think should be joked about, because there's a difference there. Like I hear you. If you don't think it's funny, I mean, we all have things we don't find funny. Mm-hmm. I get that, or can be bothered by or sensitive to. But to say you can't joke about it, I mean, hell. Like George Carlin, he's like, you always hear that thing when somebody dies. They're probably up there now smiling down on us. Well, what if they were an asshole? Maybe they're down there screaming up at us. Picture your grandmother in hell. Bacon pies without an oven. I mean, that's fucking funny. That's funny, and I can separate it because, dude, my grandmother died 3 weeks ago. And, I'm not saying that about her. She was the sweetest woman in the history of the world, and I dearly miss her, and I loved her to death. She was a saint, and my life is immeasurably better. But I can still separate the fact that George Carlin saying, picture your grandmother in hell, bacon pies without an oven, that's fucking funny to me.
See, and I guess this is splitting at hairs and grasping at straws, but that's just kind of like an in general, like, faceless, nameless grandma joke. I didn't think it was funny when Amy Schumer made a joke about Paul Walker dying in front of Tyrese Gibson at one of the Comedy Central roasts, like making a joke about his friend dying right in front of him. Like, that's just uncool to me.
Did he laugh?
No, he didn't laugh.
Like, do you remember the one with Jeffrey Ross was on, and it was they were doing the Pam Anderson roast, and Courtney Love was sitting right beside her, and Jeff Ross comes out and says, how is it possible that Courtney Love looks worse than Kurt Cobain?
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a roast.
Yeah.
We just probably just sitting on different sides of the aisle on that one.
Yeah. No, we are.
Because the thing is where do you draw the line? Like, what? I feel like if you're going to say, and not you specifically, like I'm just for the sake of the discussion and the debate here, like if you feel like that's over the line, like, okay, Paul Walker, him making a Paul Walker joke to the guy who was there when he died. It's like, okay, did he get up and leave? Like, did he throw a shit fit and leave, or did he?
I don't think he did. I don't think he did.
Okay, so on some level, he put up with it. If he hadn't been there and the joke was made about him, would that have been okay? If he hadn't been present when Paul Walker died and then he made the joke, would that have been like? It's a slippery slope, and I feel like when you start doing that, now it's time to start keeping track of what we are and are not allowed to make to laugh about and make fun of.
I think ultimately, again, if you're not even if you're a comedian, but just in general, like, say what you want, but also be empathetic and aware.
Sure.
If you're on stage and you think this is going to be a funny joke and you go for it, and it like really upsets someone and they approach you and confront you about it, don't be a douche. Own up to it and just be like, hey, it didn't come from a place of malice, and I'm sorry. And that's ultimately,
I can't even do that, dude. I can't even do that. Mine would be, I'm sorry that you're offended by that joke, but it's not my fucking job to make sure you're not offended. Like, that's not my job. My job is to make people laugh, and there was a whole room. My guess is, and I didn't see that roast, but my guess is there were other people laughing.
It was kind of a similar reaction that Dave Chappelle had to a heckler that was walking out on one of his shows, and he goes, "Ma'am, it wasn't your fault that you were assaulted, but it's not mine either."
Yeah.
I mean, which Dave Chappelle, he's had some questionable ones himself lately, and I'm saying that as someone who will tell you that Dave Chappelle is the GOAT. But
well, let's move on to our next example. Kind of similar in the sense that
I'm sorry, Donnie. I don't mean to cut you off, and I don't mean to be monopolizing this conversation. But I just got a message from someone that's listening to this.
Yeah.
That basically asked me. So I wanted to clarify earlier when I was telling this story. When I said "fuck you," I wasn't talking like "fuck you." I wasn't talking to you two guys. I was talking about the establishment in general, telling him what he could or couldn't say.
Oh, no, I understood that.
Yeah.
Well, I assumed you did, but I just got a message from someone listening that asked me who I was directing that to. So in case there's other people listening, that I was not speaking to Blake and Donnie.
I get told "fuck you" by people bigger than me all the time, so that's okay.
Well, and there's still some time left in this podcast. If it's anything like the last one, we got about another 7.5 fucking hours. So,
why do you hate me?
Yeah, dude, I just don't have the stamina. You guys are young bucks. Is there some podcast Viagra out there?
Oh, okay. So now I see how it is. It's like, freedom of speech, you fucking suck it up if I want to joke about it. I'm tired.
Am I laying down? Yes. I'm sorry, Danny. Please continue.
All right. Move on to the next example. It's kind of similar in the sense that it involves the person in question had some jokes from like 10 years ago come up on Twitter. James Gunn, director.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah. We're getting the heavy ones out of the way.
Yeah.
James Gunn, director of Guardians of the Galaxy, randomly bunch of screenshots of old jokes he made on Twitter, using the word jokes with quotation marks around them. Tweets that he had made like 10 years ago, basically, literally all of them pedophile jokes. And it caused him for a while to get fired from Disney from doing Guardians of the Galaxy 3, which of course they brought him back.
Yeah.
Now,
for the same reason they fired him, dude.
Yeah.
For the same fucking reason they fired him, which was they don't have a moral compass. The only reason they fired him was the same reason they brought him back, and that's because they thought they were going to lose money.
Yeah.
Thought there'd be a backlash, so we got to get this guy out of here. Oh, wait, everybody wants him back. We got to get him back. Let's create the illusion like we have morals.
Yeah.
But I'm sorry, I didn't mean to jump the gun.
No, I mean, I don't disagree with that. But as far as James Gunn himself in this situation, I mean, I can't really defend him on this. Like,
no.
One, I agree with you, Tate, in the sense that, say what you want, but also like I'm kind of leaning. I'm like somewhere in the middle between you guys. Like, say what you want, but there are some things that I just don't find funny. Do I think you can't joke about them? No, go right ahead. I don't find the shit that he tweeted to really be funny, or at the very least, I don't find his particular tweets, like, they weren't funny at all. They weren't even funny in the barest, most minimum Anthony Jeselnik cringe shock humor way. Like,
Okay.
in my opinion.
I'm not going to be the guy that sits here and says, you know, that's funny. I don't know what they were. I didn't read them, and I didn't care. Like, you know, if they were bad or stupid or wrong, okay. Like,
Yeah.
if they're not funny, okay, then yeah, he said some shitty things publicly. I think a lot of people have. I'm not defending him. I mean, if it meant he had to lose his job, I mean, I guess he had to lose his job. I mean,
Well, it's also like, my problem with it was that there were so many of them, like, all at once, and it's just like at a certain point, like, it would have been one thing if it was just like one or two like jokes that just weren't funny and didn't land well and all that, but like, it was a whole bunch of them, and at a certain point, and they were all about pedophilia, and at a certain point I had to be like, all right, dude, is there something you want to tell us? Like, you seem a little obsessed here.
Yes, exactly. Yes, if I can jump in right now. It was one thing to have, you know, and this was when he was like, I guess, trying to like keep his options open if he wanted to also do like shock comedy or whatever. But he had one, and you know, and once again, like, just so everyone understands, all the tweets in question involved almost him personally molesting someone.
Yeah.
And the first one is like, okay, he tried to do a shock joke, whatever. And then he does the second one, and it's like, oh, he did a follow-up. He did a sequel joke. Interesting. He did a third one. Okay, I guess he had to complete the trilogy. And then he kept doing it. It's like he's going for just a theme, a saga, a series. And then that was all of them. And it's like, yeah, dude, this is like seriously on your fucking mind a lot, isn't it? And that was just really making people fucking question him as a person. And I'm going to go ahead and say the other part. Some pictures surfaced, and he had a pedophile themed like costume party in which he was dressed as a priest, and these girls were dressed as like schoolgirls around him and stuff. And once again, like, dude, like, why is this on your fucking brain all the time?
Yeah.
man, I don't want to be the guy that's painting the corner of defending that. But let me unpack a little bit here, if I may. I didn't mean to step on you, Blake, if you weren't done.
No, I was done.
Okay, so again, I'm not defending it. I'm asking questions, and it seems like right now in our society, even that can get you in trouble. But I'm just asking questions.
You are completely safe here.
Oh, thanks. So, the fact that he was dressed like a priest and other grown adults were dressed like Catholic schoolgirls, that's what made it a pedophile party? Or was it called a pedophile party? Like, is that what was just alluded to under the idea of, for the clickbait or the headline? I mean, when you're talking about somebody's career, it just seems like that should be spelled out. Like, is that just what everybody drew a conclusion to? I mean, hell, I was at a Halloween party 10 or 15 years ago, and I went like a priest, and my wife went as a Catholic schoolgirl, because she was one. When she went to school, she went to BW, and she had a Catholic schoolgirl uniform, and I had $20 in my pocket and went up to Walmart, and they had a priest costume, and I bought it, and it was fucking funny. It doesn't mean that it was trying to allude to something else. Secondly, okay, let's say all that shit that he did, it's really fucked up. I'm not trying to put you guys on the spot or anybody else, but okay, what did he do to make that null and void now? Was it just time that went by? Did he kiss somebody's ass? Did he apologize enough that everybody's like, okay, that makes up for the kind of person you are and all this shit on your brain? Or is everybody just tired of talking about it and bitching about it? And now, because now he's directing movies. Mm-hmm. I mean, again, I'm not asking you guys personally. I'm just asking anybody to listen. Who's still not watching his movies?
Right.
Like, is anybody not going to see him? Because otherwise, I don't know, you're kind of full of shit. Again, just speaking to everybody, you're kind of full of shit. You're going to sit here and say this guy is possibly a pedophile and so these things are so horrendous, yet we're still going to see all the shit he does. It's like, well, then quit bitching. You know? Yeah. I don't know. Yeah.
No, I think that's definitely fair.
I'll give you a real quick example, if I may. Mm-hmm. During 9/11, I was watching, and I want to say it was maybe a week or so after, and I could be wrong on that, but it felt real fresh. Like it was a week or 2 weeks after 9/11, and you guys might be to really remember all that in adult detail. But I mean, we were glued to the TV, like round the clock. It was 24/7, and they had a concert that was to benefit all the firefighters and first responders, and it was I want to say it was actually in New York, and so you had all these first responders there. Paul McCartney was there, all these different big time people were there performing, and it was to raise money. And Richard Gere came out and basically started telling all these people that had lost their whole world about how there needed to be all this tolerance and hey, this and that, and again, I don't want to sit here and quote because it was 20 years ago. I just remember being so bothered by his approach to that, how he wasn't reading the room. I mean, I felt like he was offending a lot of people there, and I found it offensive. I didn't, there wasn't really social media at that point, but I remember thinking, you know what, fuck this guy. Like, so far removed from what is happening here. And you know what, I could go back and watch it right now, and maybe I wouldn't feel that way. Maybe it was just because I was a young guy and I took it the wrong way. I don't know, but I remember thinking, like, I'm never going to fucking watch one of his movies again. And I never did. If he's in a movie, I don't go see it because I don't like it. And now his politics crossed over into something where I'm like, I can't enjoy this guy on the screen. And I mean, I never saw anything he ever did again. And that's just how I didn't go online and piss and moan about it. I didn't make some big thing where he shouldn't have a career anymore. I made a personal decision that I'm not going to support this guy anymore. And I didn't.
Now, here's a question for you. Like I said, these tweets that James Gunn did, they came to the surface like 10 years after they were made. And a lot of people made the argument when this was going on that, like, because basically what happened was somebody purposefully started going back through his Twitter feed to find something to basically looking for dirt.
Well, sure.
So it sort of started this argument of like, is it right to give people shit for something that they said so long ago? Do you feel that there's like a time limit on shitty behavior?
And that he is, and I guess the counterpoint was, and my point earlier was only that nothing I've said tonight was me trying to pick up, the sword and, strike anyone.
Sure.
It was only me trying to be like, I don't fault Disney for firing him. I thought that was a very fair and honest reaction to an employee of yours having all that shit of theirs come out.
Fair, sure.
But the counterpoint to that was, he has since proven, and since he's been the director of the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, he has proven that he is a solid human being. He treats others with respect. Everyone who works with him appreciates him and respects him. No one actually came forward and said, oh yeah, he mistreated me, or he did this to me, he did that to me. It was, and I think that is fair context to have here. It was just that he had made jokes and had done gimmicky pictures in the past that were very off-putting. But there, to my knowledge, to this day, still, there was no actual instance of an actual person coming forward and accusing him of anything.
Yeah. No, I hear you.
What were you saying, Donnie?
I was just saying, do you, like I said, with these tweets having come out like 10 years after the fact, do you think there's a time limit on shitty behavior? Like, do you think there's a point where it's like, why are we bringing this up so long after the fact?
Yeah.
I don't think that I don't think that's, I think that, I don't think so. I think that if something comes up that shows, some wrongdoing in the past or some indiscretion, yeah, I don't think there should be a statute of limitations on that being addressed. Yeah. Because, I mean, take it to its absolute extreme, and again, I'm speaking of the absolute extreme here, but if you have Nazi war criminals in their 90s, they're still going to stand trial when they were found, I mean, that happened in the early to mid 90s. They found these guys that were in their 90s, and they saw trial, they take them to trial in Israel because, right. You're a war criminal. Like, exactly. Time doesn't make that go away. And obviously that's the most extreme situation. But no, I'd say, if you have, like, look at Bill Cosby. Well, I'm sure you guys will get to all that stuff, but if somebody does something wrong and they've never been called out or it's never been addressed, or there's never been any kind of a penalty for it, or just the nature of the way the world changes and the way our culture changes and becomes in many ways more enlightened, things that were okay at one time are no longer. Those things need to be addressed, and we have to have those tough conversations.
Yeah.
And part of those conversations are definitely calling that type of stuff out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I 100% agree with that. James Gunn's saying some horrible things like that, then yeah, definitely need to call him out. And to the extent of saying that his employer has every right, if he's doing something that looks bad on the company, yeah, they have every right in the world to fire him.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the. Go ahead.
Just to add on, though, I don't believe for 1 second they fired him because they were somehow morally offended. I think they fired him because they thought they were going to lose money. I mean, ultimately, I don't think that's a secret. It's the same reason they called him back. I don't think they thought he was magically the best guy in the world. They saw how many people. I think both decisions had way more to do with money than how they morally felt about anything he ever said or did.
I mean, I definitely agree with that.
I don't have an argument for that.
As evidenced by how many pedophiles I'm sure Disney has already employed over the last 80 or 100 years. I mean, and Nazi sympathizers and anti-Semitic sons of bitches, and there's all kinds of people that are horrible people that still get to be very successful.
Right.
Because it's about unfortunately, it's about money more than anything.
Yeah. Well, let's move on to the next example here. Tate, you specifically requested this one. Chris Benoit.
Yeah.
And I remember when this happened, I was still watching wrestling at the time when this happened. Chris Benoit, 2007, he murdered his wife, child, and then committed suicide. And the thing is, when it happened, the day he and his wife and son were found dead, I remember that tribute show on Monday Night Raw with Vince McMahon and everything. And then over the next 12 hours, more information started coming out over the circumstances. Because when they did that tribute show, they didn't know that he was responsible.
Yeah.
And I remember the next night on ECW on Sci-Fi, they, that opening with Vince McMahon where he's just like, hey, now we know that he did it. And after tonight, Chris Benoit's never going to be mentioned again. And he never was. And they've basically retconned him out of existence. And this one's interesting because in a lot of these cases with cancel culture, the society and the fan base involved are usually the ones behind the canceling. But in this situation, it's more so the company is behind it, and a large portion of the fan base are upset over the canceling. So it's kind of a bit of an opposite day here.
A publicly traded company.
Right. And, there's a lot of people who think it's not right that Chris Benoit has been erased from wrestling culture because of what he contributed to the business and to the culture. Whereas other people think, it is right because, we don't want to glorify a murderer. Blake, I want to hear specifically what you have to say just because, you not being a wrestling fan, and then we'll I want to hear from Tate. I just kind of want to get your outsider looking in perspective.
I think that, because how do you mention someone like that ever again?
It's very much a very extreme case of separating the artist from the art.
Nah, honestly, my immediate reaction is considering what he did and the fact that he took, it was his wife and how many kids? Not saying that it was 2 kids. Oh yeah, that's definitely wrong as opposed to 1 kid. I'm not saying that at all, but what is the actual,
it was his wife and his son and
himself.
And himself. And I'm just telling you what I know to be true, as far as anyone could know, is that he strangled his son and his wife, killed his wife, and then committed suicide. And no one that knew him in 30 years of the professional wrestling business ever would have suspected such a thing. And I guess there's different different accounts and different information depending on what you hear or what I don't want to sound like I'm an expert on the case because I'm not, and I don't know who is, but that I mean the guy had suffered countless concussions and there's extenuating circumstances as to why maybe this happened.
Right.
I'm not going to pretend to have an answer or know or condone or anything like that. I mean, obviously, it's absolutely horrible and horrendous.
Yeah. No, I mean, like, in other sports, when you were guilty of a horrible crime or when you disgrace the game or, whatever, you were stripped of your medals, you were basically erased from the halls or whatever. So, no, I would say that's probably I would guess that that's probably the best approach, the safest approach, the smartest approach is to, is to do what they've done and basically erase him from their history. I don't know. That's my immediate guess. I mean, unless there's some maybe I don't know.
Tate?
I'm gonna get borderline hypocritical here in my own answer because the thing about this is that I don't think that you can. I don't think that you can. It's one thing, like if we're talking about, let's say Pete Rose, get kicked out of the Hall of Fame, and all that type of stuff, or someone doing something like that that's just absolutely horrible, and stripping them of their medals, or stripping them of their titles, or stripping them of this or that. Like, I get it. I don't think that the guy lost. I mean, he threw everything away, obviously, but just in the context of his career, no Hall of Fame ceremony for Chris Benoit, no glorification of him, no celebration of him. But to me, the idea of trying to somehow erase him like he never existed, it almost in a way puts a bigger spotlight on him to a lot of people because you're talking about, okay, I mean, he's in the main event of WrestleMania 20, if I'm not mistaken, and it's him, Shawn Michaels, and Triple H, and they can't mention his name. He wins the belt. I mean, I don't know. I think that there's just a certain point where it's not realistic to say that you're somehow going to completely erase someone from existence, especially today. They can't erase a freaking picture off the internet if they really want to.
Yeah.
But to say that somehow a guy that went through there, I'm not saying celebrate him. I just think to try to somehow bleep his name and never utter a word of it again, it almost gives it more ominous, notoriety in a weird way than to just, I don't know. I think that there's definitely things you can do, but when you get to that point, I don't know. I don't think that's. I think again, like you said, Donnie, I think you have to separate the artist from the art. That all said, since that happened, with the exception of one time that I was at a friend's house and it was his TV and he was watching it, and that's where I was. I haven't watched a single Chris Benoit match since that happened. I decided that at that point I wasn't going to watch it anymore. I wasn't going to watch him ever again, and I never did. And, that said, I don't push that on anyone. Matter of fact, I've never publicly said that or posted about it or any of that shit until just now, telling you guys. Like, my son wants to watch it, or anybody else, my friends, that's their business. It's really not something that has to be up for debate for me. Like, it's not what I want to do, because in my own small way, I don't want to support him. I don't want to, and that's just how I personally feel about it. But to say that he can't be ever mentioned again, I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm saying it's unrealistic.
And the kind of like add on to that, it's kind of like a similar thing years ago when Warner Brothers released like this collection of like giant collection of Looney Tunes cartoons. Hang on, my dog's being an asshole. Stop it. When Warner Brothers released this giant collection of old Looney Tunes cartoons, they had like a disclaimer because a lot of the cartoons had, the older cartoons had some, not cool racial stereotypes in them.
Sure.
And they had a disclaimer like, hey, these cartoons got some, stuff that reflect the culture of the time. It wasn't cool then and it's not cool now, but we feel like removing them would be removing them and acting like they didn't exist would be more harmful. So, we put them here with this disclaimer.
Well, and with the Benoit situation, you're also inadvertently removing the history of so many other people that did nothing wrong.
Yeah.
That are now somehow pulled out of that.
Right.
I mean, some, like it or not, and again, I'm not supporting him. I don't watch him. Mm-hmm. That said, some of Eddie Guerrero's greatest matches of all time were with Chris Benoit. And now, what? That's not there anymore?
Right. Well, let's move on to our next example. Let's move on to Apu and The Simpsons. So, in recent years, there's kind of been this anti-Apu movement on The Simpsons, because Apu is he is a stereotype, an Indian with the stereotypical Indian accent who runs a convenience store, and there was a documentary a couple years ago. I think it was called The Problem About Apu or something like that, and it was just like a documentary about how a lot of different Indian and Indian Americans in the entertainment industry, how they've been negatively affected by, the stereotype of Apu, how over the years, I remember there was a couple of them talk about how going into voiceover roles or auditioning for roles or whatever, they would constantly be told hey, do the Apu voice and stuff like that. And there was this kind of anti-Apu movement against The Simpsons. And there was an episode a couple years ago, shortly after the documentary, where they kind of alluded to it in a kind of cheeky way where the plot was Lisa was reading a book that Marge loved as a kid, and Lisa's like, yeah, this book's really offensive by today's standards, and it caused Marge to look at it through modern eyes and her to be like, oh my God, what do you do when something you used to love is suddenly offensive? And Lisa's just like, it's hard to say. And while they're having this conversation, there's a picture of Apu next to them. And it's now it's gotten to the point to where Apu hasn't been in an episode of The Simpsons for quite a while. I think his voice actor, Hank Azaria, said he's not going to voice him anymore. Now they've recently said that white people will not voice any people of color on The Simpsons. Now, me being a longtime fan of The Simpsons, I grew up on this show. I still watch every new episode every Sunday. My thing is, yes, Apu is a stereotype, but that's kind of the point. He's a stereotype to make fun of people who only see the stereotypes. Because if you go back to older episodes that centered on Apu, you see that he is so much more than the stereotype. You look on the surface, you just see the Indian guy with the accent who only, he works at a convenience store. But the thing is, there's in old episodes they reveal he's got a degree in computer science. The only reason he stayed in America was so he could pay off his student loans. He's a small business owner. He's a very intelligent person. The episode where he gets his citizenship. He knows
he's smarter than everybody in town.
Yeah, he's smarter than literally everybody. The scene where Homer's like, I'll help you study, and it's name the 3 branches of government, and Apu's judicial, executive, and legislative, and Homer's like, no, no, and no.
We're gonna have to start back with the electrical college.
Yeah. In the episodes revolving around Apu's culture have always been treated with respect, and the episode where he marries Manjula, everything revolving Apu and his culture has always been treated very well, with respect. And for a while, to me, when I was growing up and during when those episodes first aired, I always saw Apu as the 6th Simpson. And to me, it just feels the people in that documentary I mentioned who were this is how Apu affected me negatively in the entertainment industry. That's bad. That shouldn't have happened to you. But to me, that's not the fault of The Simpsons or Apu. That's the fault of people not getting the joke, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'd pretty much go with that. The thing is if it's a stereotype, okay, but he's all these wonderful things. In fact, I can't think of anything other than the fact that he works his ass off, and maybe too much. I don't know. Has 8 children, takes care of them all, does what he's supposed to do. I don't think there's ever been anything about Apu that's negative. I don't think they've portrayed anything about it that's negative.
Right.
And anytime he's had a lapse in judgment, he immediately feels bad about it.
The episode when he cheats on his wife.
Yeah.
He gets penalized hardcore for it.
And that's not a stereotype of him being, an Indian. That's a stereotype of being a man.
Yeah.
But the thing is too is I don't know. It's acting, and I don't know. Especially when you're talking about voice acting, like who gets to do the voice if it's an alien? Like, is there a rule on that? If it's somebody that's green, I don't know. But yeah, I didn't see the documentary, and I'm obviously not I'm not I'm Caucasian, so maybe I don't have a right to say something, and maybe I don't, or maybe I'm not pretending to understand somebody else's plight or somebody else's situation.
Mm-hmm.
And for the record, Hank Azaria, came out and said, that the more he looked into this and the more that he saw and studied and enlightened himself to it, that he came to the conclusion that it wasn't something he was prepared to do anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not far be it from me to sit and second guess Hank Azaria's motives, but the guy's made $100 billion trillion off of doing it for the last 25, 30 years. Is it really worth continuing to rock the boat? Maybe not. But he has every right in the world to make that call, and if that makes people feel better, I would wonder, and I don't know, but I would wonder if Hank Azaria's decision not to do it has to do with the fact that he thinks it's inherently wrong for someone to voice a character of a different ethnicity, or because of him doing it, he sees just how much it's caused a problem to people of that ethnicity, and that's the reason. You know what I'm saying? Like, maybe it's not inherently wrong to do it, except for the fact that he sees how it affects real people,
Mm-hmm.
and realizing that he's doing something that's hurting people in the real world. It's a moot point whether or not it's okay to voice a character that's of a different race than you are.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so for that, I respect the fact that he's got to do what, just like the rest of us, he's got to do what's best for him. I don't think down to brass tacks, I don't think it's inherently wrong for anyone of any ethnicity to voice anyone of any other ethnicity. Specifically if it's not in a purposely negative stereotype. But, that's a very general statement. And again, like everything else, it's a case by case.
Yeah, I think in cases like that, it comes down to whether or not the ethnicity is a part of the character's identity.
Yeah,
like
I'd agree with that.
Kind of like how back, after the Christian Bale Batman movies, and they were talking about who's going to be the next Batman. I remember Idris Elba was on a lot of people's lists, and a lot of people were like, "Well, Batman's not black. A black man can't play Batman." And I was always like, "Why can't a black man play Batman?" I mean, what is Batman? He's a detective. He's a philanthropist. He's, a trained fighter. Like, these things are not exclusive to white people. So why can't a black man play Batman? And also, let's be real here, Idris Elba as Batman would be fucking awesome.
Well, and the other thing too is, I think that there's maybe other more subtle aspects to Batman's character that ultimately would be different if it was being played by a black man instead of a white man, and I would welcome and celebrate that.
Right.
Like, I've been reading Batman most of my life, and with very, very few exceptions, he's a white guy. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I think it'd be kind of cool to see a different take and a different perspective and a different culture. It's not like it erases whatever else has been going on forever, and it's not like it prevents it going back to the status quo whenever. I never understand the idea of trying to limit the perspectives of the characters. Mm-hmm. Like, go for it. Let's see.
Which a good example of that would be Stan Lee's Batman. If you've never read that,
I haven't.
He's a black man, and it's pretty awesome.
Cool.
But back to the subject of Apu and The Simpsons. Blake, we haven't heard from you yet. What do you got to say?
This may be a very lame answer, especially on a podcast, but I think when it came to this example, this was one that I was best left listening to what other people had to say, mm-hmm. instead of forcing myself to have a specific opinion on it. because honestly, I have not known what to say about it. I haven't had anything specific to say about it. And I think a big problem with white boys on the internet is they almost force themselves to have an opinion on stuff,
Yeah.
on everything. But I do plan, now that I've been reminded of its existence, I do plan on checking out the documentary in question. But as far as
Sure. No, I'm with you.
as far as the critique of Apu, I have no arguments for how people who share his ethnicity, his culture, are saying they have been made to feel by, I guess, the ripple effect of his existence in pop culture. So
I agree.
I leave it at that for me.
Yeah,
All right.
I'm with you on that too.
Yeah.
My experience isn't going to be the same. I can't relate to an African American man's experience or a woman's experience, and I'm not going to pretend like I can.
Right. Exactly. Like if a American citizen who is of Indian heritage were to say to me, "I don't like the character of Apu," I am in no fucking position to look them in the eye and be like, "Well, here's the thing, though. Actually,
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, not everybody. It amazes me how many people still need to learn that pretty basic fucking lesson. Not everybody experiences the world the way I do.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how many people just think, oh, well, just because that's not my problem means it's no one's problem.
Exactly.
Or, it's... Yeah. And that's where I would be on that. I mean, if Hank Azaria doesn't want to do it and he has his reasons and there's people that are saying, hey, we don't want him to do it and he agrees with them, who the fuck am I to say that that's wrong?
Yeah.
All right, so to finish what I was saying before I went into the ether, when it comes to people playing or voicing characters that aren't the same ethnicity as them, like I said, it depends on whether or not, I feel like it depends on whether or not the ethnicity of the character, is crucial to their identity. A black person playing Batman, I think would be completely fine. I would welcome it. But would we welcome a white person playing Martin Luther King Jr. or voicing Martin Luther King Jr.?
No.
Yeah.
No, I think it's, yeah. Well, I remember there being heat over Michael Clark Duncan playing Kingpin in the Ben Affleck Daredevil movie.
And he was awesome.
It's he nailed it.
Yeah. We'll move on.
Well, I've had this conversation on the Colonial Heroes podcast before, and we get into a little bit about, make up new characters. Why do you got to turn the characters that we've grown up with into female, or make them, a minority character or whatever? And one of the examples was Thor. Okay, well, just make up a different character. Why do you have to have a female Thor?
It's because comic book readers don't want new shit anymore.
Yeah. Well, and it just goes to this idea. It's Thor as an example. I've been reading Thor, not as much, but I mean, Thor's been around for 60 or 70 years.
Mm-hmm.
What's the problem with getting a different perspective?
Right.
It's not like it's taking anything away from you. It's
right.
That's the part I don't get. It's you're not losing anything.
Yeah.
If you don't like it, don't read it.
The stories you already read and loved still happened. You still remember them. Marvel Comics is not going to break into your house and burn all your old war comics.
Well, and the people that bitch about it, and I'm not going to retread it. I'm sure both of you guys have seen it. You've seen that post where it talks about how Marvel Comics was always against the establishment. They were always about inclusion and
mm-hmm.
people that are different. I mean, the X-Men was an allegory for civil rights.
Mm-hmm.
And the people that don't see that or get it or are old enough to remember or too dumb to realize or recognize it, it's their problem.
Right. There comes a point where you have to blame the audience and not the art.
Yeah, I blame the audience when it comes to a lot of things, starting with Star Wars. But sorry, go ahead.
Just to finish off on this topic, like you said about those people are why don't you just make new characters? Well, I mean, in my experience with, fan bases like comic books and stuff like that, people don't want to give anything a chance anymore. They want their status quo, which is why they bitch whenever the status quo gets changed. Like, it's a never-ending circle, and I notice it really bad in the comic fan base. Like, they want the status quo, but they want something new. But then when you give them something new, they don't want to give it a chance because it interrupts the status quo. Like, it's like, what the fuck do you want?
Well, and people want to bitch before they know what the hell's going on.
Yeah.
I remember several years back, they're going, "Oh man, did you hear? They come in the shop. Did you hear, man? Spider-Man's black now. Spider-Man's a black guy." Well, it's Miles Morales, and it's not Peter Parker. It's a different guy.
Yeah.
Like, you're just, all you got to do is take 30 seconds to educate yourself and not sound like a fucking dumbass.
Yeah.
But anyway,
let's move on to our next example. Another incident of somebody having their past come back to bite them. Dan Harmon, creator of Rick and Morty, which is the most fucking overrated show I've ever seen. I think this happened in 2009, or I should say the backlash happened like maybe a year ago. But basically, it came to light, I think it was back in 2009, Dan Harmon pitched a parody of the show Dexter. For those of you who don't know, Dexter is a show about a serial killer who kills other killers. So Dan Harmon had pitched a parody of Dexter where basically the serial killer, instead of killing other people, goes back in time and molests sex offenders while they're children. And he pitched this idea and it never got greenlit. I wonder why. And I mean, you can expect the backlash to happen over it. For me, this comes back to another thing where it's just like, that's not funny. That's kind of fucking disturbing, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, what happened to him?
I don't.
These people just bitch, basically.
Yeah,
it came to light during the hashtag Save Our Children posts on Facebook, basically. Yeah. And people were finally like, well, then I don't fuck with Rick and Morty anymore. And it's just like, yeah.
Okay. like the guy, but just so I'm clear, the guy pitched an idea that was a shitty idea and people were bothered and offended by it. And he got basically a backlash from that.
Yeah.
And that's the end of the story.
So then I completely had incorrect knowledge of it. From my understanding, he did like a webisode. He actually filmed a parody of Dexter, like a short, like in the same vein as College Humor, Funny or Die. So Donnie, when you looked into this, it didn't happen at all. Like, it was never made.
I will double check, but I think he just pitched it.
So we're not allowed to tell ideas now without. I mean, that's the thing is that right there comes down to what the consequences were.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because if people were pissed about it and thought it was shitty and gave him a hard time and he lost money or this or that, like, he has whatever he has coming to him. But, if it just pitched an idea, I mean, I don't know, it's an idea.
Okay, no, you're right, Blake. He did actually film like a webisode of it.
Is that a cartoon or?
No, it's live action.
Yeah, I couldn't really speak to that without seeing it.
I mean, to me, it's just like, why would you even pitch an idea like that? Like, at what point in the thought process did you go, yeah, I think people will find this funny?
I don't know. I mean, I think there's people that would find it funny. I'm not saying I can't wait to watch it or anything. I'm not saying I think it's funny. I'm just saying, I mean, it's parody.
Yeah.
It's also, I mean, it could also, it's all in the execution. It could also be soulless garbage, Right. And the topic is definitely touchy, but it's parody.
That's also, I mean, what you were reminding me of just now, Donnie, and Tate, you may be aware of this being, the owner of a comic shop. Mark Millar, who did, Kick-Ass and Wanted and Nemesis, he apparently pitched to DC Comics as a joke, quote, joke.
Yeah.
Instead of the death of Superman, he pitched the rape of Wonder Woman. Once again, as a joke. 1, fuck you. 2, fuck you. Yeah. I mean, it's just like, dude.
But I mean, step back for a second from. I'm again, like, I'm not speaking to you personally, just in general. Everybody, step back a second because that sounds like a clickbait headline. It's like Mark Millar says, "Oh, the rape of Wonder Woman." Okay, yeah, that on the surface sounds shitty, but also there's a bunch of people that can't wait to take that as the shittiest thing in the world. What if the story is about that happening to what a lot of people think is the strongest woman in the world and somebody look up to? It happens to them, and it's a story about how she deals with it and how she meets the challenge, and if it inspires people that are have gone through similar horrific ordeals to deal with it themselves, or to have someone that maybe, you know, in their own maybe isolated situation, you know, can see how their hero dealt with something like that. Maybe there's something in it, and I'm not saying there is. I don't know. I'm just saying maybe there's an argument for the idea that something like that happening to Wonder Woman helps someone realize they're not alone, helps someone realize that they are strong enough to face it or to deal with it or to seek help for it. Like, none of that's ever mentioned. It's always, oh, he was trying to be a fucking asshole, you know?
Yeah,
I don't know.
From what I had gathered in this, from what I gathered when I did search on this, was that he literally just did it to troll a pitch meeting. So it wasn't every ounce of intellectual goodwill that you just put out was not put out by him.
Okay, I mean.
Yeah.
And to like kind of bring us back on topic here, I'm looking at some screenshots of the Dan Harmon video, and yikes. Like, again, at what point in the thought process did he go, this is fucking funny? Like, I'm sorry, I don't see how, like, I'm sticking to my guns on this one. That's just straight up fucking disturbing.
Well, I haven't seen it, and I'm going to assume that you're right, and I would agree with you that it sounds disturbing. If you're looking at it and saying it is, I have no doubt it is disturbing. But is he allowed to do it?
I mean,
should he have? You know, I mean, is the cost his career? Because apparently it isn't. Then what does that say about us? Rick and Morty, new episodes coming out all the time.
But to play devil's advocate, people that like this thing didn't like resurface, because I mean, when Dan Harmon made this, he was pretty much a nobody, and then now that he's a somebody, and that's when it resurfaced, is when, you know, he started getting some more name recognition. So, I mean, and then as far as Rick and Morty still getting new episodes, I mean, I guess you could make the argument there that, you know, there are people not associated with Dan Harmon, at least, you know, in the sense that they aren't part of his inner circle, who work on and make that show every week.
The biggest thing I'm going to have to disagree with you on is calling Rick and Morty overrated. There's been several episodes of that show that I put on genius category. There's some shit in that's, I mean, I'm a big animation fan. I mean, I've watched Simpsons for 33 years. You know, before that it was the Flintstones and the Warner Brothers and all that shit. And I'm a huge sci-fi guy. And there are concepts. It's high concept, low brow science fiction. And there's stuff in there that I consider to be nothing short of genius. And I'm not saying they're all that way, but there's some of that stuff that you go down this wormhole intellectually and have to keep up and be paying attention, and it rewards you. Like The Simpsons, especially in the early days, the more you're paying attention and the more you're cognitively dialed in, the more rewarded you are as a viewer.
I don't know. I felt like I would have been rewarded more huffing glue than watching more Rick and Morty, but that's just me.
I'm biting my tongue so fucking hard right now.
Do you like it or you don't like it?
I don't like the fact that I am talked down to by its toxic members of the fandom is really. And before you interrupt me and go, well, don't take that out on the show itself. I would see your point there, but yeah, my thing with that, whatever allows society to move beyond the obsession with that show is fine with me, because that is a toxic fan base, and especially in the last few years. But I mean,
I don't know anything about all that. I'm not going to sit and defend that.
How could you have missed it? Like,
I don't. I mean, I'm not
because
saying
he's
you
an
do,
adult.
like, I don't want to sound like I'm just being an asshole, but I don't fucking. I'm not on like Twitter and Instagram and all that shit reading what other people think, because I don't fucking care.
That's fair.
And again, I don't mean that like as a disparaging remark to you guys at all. Like, right. I don't like I'm a big fan of Mandalorian, and
Yeah.
I'm glad it got renewed, and it seems like I have friends that really dig it. But past my friends that watch it, I don't know what everybody else thinks because I don't fucking care.
Yeah. And I feel like that's going to be the staple of this episode is, now I'm not saying this to you, but
well, and I mean, and I think it's the same thing. I mean, you're not necessarily saying that. It's like the idea to me, and it might just be our age difference. The idea to me of taking into account a fan base in terms of the show and whether it's good or not, and maybe that's not what you're saying.
yeah.
But to me, I'm like, who the fuck cares what anybody else thinks? If
don't-
you're saying that the fan base is so bad that even if the show's good, the bad of the fan base outweighs the good of the show. I mean, I guess there could be an argument for that. I don't know.
I mean, this goes into a rant, a very specific rant I have that would take us way off topic for the subject of this
Well, I'm really interested. Can you give me like the cliff notes? Give me like a 30-second shot of it, or?
So basically, our friend Trevor showed me this random new Adult Swim show, and he showed me a few episodes of it. I straight faced through all of them, and I was like, "Huh, okay." And at the time, I was thinking to myself, "Yeah, I'll never fucking hear of this show again." But thanks for the suggestion, Trevor. And I literally wake up one morning, and everyone in the world, everyone in America, is obsessed with this fucking cartoon. And like they have the T-shirt, they're quoting the memes, they're posting about it all the time, and it was just so fucking annoying how across generations, so many people came together to celebrate this thing randomly that I was like, there's no way that this is going to go mainstream. And then beyond that, it evolved into this speech, this preaching of like, well, you actually have to have a high IQ to understand the show. Like, go fuck yourself. Like, I just don't think it's funny, man. And
that's all.
I need to calm down.
Well, and I mean, I don't know. I think anybody can. Here's the thing, too, is I didn't watch the show when it came out. I think they're on season 4, and when season 3 was about to start is when I was like, oh, I'm going to give this a shot. As a matter of fact, I was at a buddy of mine's house, and he showed me one episode. He's like, check this out. It's kind of cool. So I probably missed the wave of being irritated to hell and back from the culture. Like, I can remember being annoyed at how many people were coming in when I worked at Spencer's, how many people were coming in and asking for Rick and Morty shit and Adventure Time shit. I knew nothing about either one of them, except I was tired of hearing about it. Like, people wanting their shit. But I didn't watch any of it. And then when my buddy hooked me up to this, I was like, I'm going to give this a shot. I am not, and I know you're not saying I am, but I'm not saying you have to be smart to watch it. I'm saying I personally watching it picked up more the closer I was paying attention. It wasn't just a dry run. It wasn't just a background noise show. I thought it was really cool. And I was a huge Futurama fan. I love science fiction. And when you can mix a little bit of comedy or social commentary in with sci-fi, that makes it even better. And I just thought, man, I'm a huge fan of Futurama and its apples and oranges, but the Rick and Morty stuff, there's probably 6 or 7 episodes where I'm just like, fuck, this is really good. And it's not because the culture told me so. Like I said, I don't subscribe to.
And I didn't mean to sound like I was taking that out on you, but I mean,
well, you fucking did, Blake. So
there was just something that was really building up in me. So,
I hear you, man.
But no,
I felt that way about Nickelback.
I am too dialed in, and this wasn't me picking on Trevor either. But it's just like, for me, it was just like Trevor's like, "Hey, you got to watch this new show out right now," and he showed it to me, and I'm like, okay. And then like it just blew up like beyond like my anticipation and my ability to keep up. And I was like, really? Like, it didn't. And I'm not talking like I just, I've seen a picture of it and I think it's dumb. Like, I've watched like, a handful of hours of it. And like, I understand like the punchlines and the morals and stuff. It just doesn't do it for me.
Yeah. It's just not your jam.
But then when it's because like, I'm a Neanderthal who can't like comprehend it. It's like, yo, like I was in middle school watching Frasier. Like I'm above you.
Oh yeah, that's shitty. If that's the toxicity of the fan base trying to be like, oh, if you don't like this, you must be a dumbass. Yeah, that's stupid. And by the way, that's a really old argument for assholes to have. Oh, you don't like this? That just means you're not artsy fartsy enough. That's like fine art and shit. Oh,
Yeah.
you just don't get it. If you don't see this squiggle on a canvas for $2.3 million, it's not that this is just dumb shit that kids could do. It's that you don't get it.
Yeah.
And same thing with movie critics and shit.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm with you on that. That's a shitty argument.
Well, that was like, I was like, well, then I immediately had to self-reflect and been like, this must have been how I sounded when other people didn't like Christopher Nolan's Inception. Like that must have been what I came off as. Like,
it was.
Well, and I know I had friends that felt that way when I was talking about Interstellar.
Yeah.
Like, I went and saw that. I didn't like it. Oh, you weren't paying close enough attention because it's great. Like I somehow in inferring that it's great, and if you don't think so, you're either an idiot or you weren't paying attention.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Well, let's move on to a more recent example. It's also a bit of an opposite example where the person being canceled, basically, the person who is suffering from cancel culture still has the support of pretty much all of society. The recent incidents with Amber Heard and Johnny Depp. Basically, long story short, Amber Heard basically accused Johnny Depp of beating her when they were married. And, of course, the backlash you could expect where he started getting fired from projects left and right. And then it came out that Johnny Depp was the one who got abused. There's pictures of him beaten. He's got, I believe there's one where he had a burn mark, like a cigarette was put out on him. Excuse me. And it basically the internet owes Johnny Depp an apology. The evidence came out that he was the one being abused, phone calls, photos, records, all this other stuff. But he's still getting fired from all these different projects left and right. He recently got fired from the Fantastic Beasts movie. So it's just kind of like, he's basically he's provided evidence to prove his innocence. Society is, turned around and they're behind him because they're like, we were wrong. And then he's still getting fired from everything. And it's just like, it sparked conversations about like, you see a lot of the, in recent years, like the Me Too movement and believe all women and stuff like that. And absolutely, yes. There is a long history of, women who are victims of abuse and assault not being taken seriously and their claims not being taken seriously. And I mean, that's a fact, and it's shitty that it's a fact, and we need to do better on that. But at the same time, I feel like we can and should do that while also not sacrificing the concept of innocent before proven guilty. And I mean, Johnny Depp, he's given evidence that he is in fact innocent of the claims against him, but he's still, suffering for it. What do you guys got to say?
Well, first of all, and I know this is apples and oranges, his replacement for Fantastic Beasts 3 is pretty fucking legit, though. Though that's off topic. I apologize for that. This whole story has gone back and forth so many times. I'm almost too fucking nervous to comment on it now because, like, it's been like on one side of the ring, over and over again, like to the other side of the ring. Eventually it's gotten to a point where I feel like a lot of people are also just tired of hearing about both of them. Mm-hmm. But if he was in the wrong, he deserves, to be punished for it. If she, but the same thing can be said for if she is lying, that is wrong and she needs to be called out for that. And she needs to answer for that, to try to, that's character assassination. That's defamation of character to try to, destroy, someone's sight in the public, especially in that industry. That's just the kiss of death. Mm-hmm. But so ultimately, I wasn't there, and again, like, I feel like it has gone back and forth so many times that, like, but here's what I have to say about it. Now that the pendulum has swung back and it seems that Amber Heard is the abusive and toxic one and the incorrect one here, the one in the wrong, I can't help but notice, all the guys posting about it on social media, the F that CUNT and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
I find it a little curious that I'm seeing all these guys pick up the sword against Amber Heard, and I don't recall seeing them on the battlefield when Harvey Weinstein was going on.
Yeah.
You have all this shit to say about Amber Heard being a liar, but you had absolutely nothing to say about all these men who it was true. They were doing that shit. So what I have to say about this right now is that that's fucked up from what I'm seeing.
Yeah. Tate?
My take on that is it's different than anything else we've talked about so far, because you're talking about something going on between a man and woman, a husband and wife. Like, I don't know. I didn't hear much about it because I don't care. I don't know that it's possible for me to give a shit less about that. Like, I don't know what's going on, in my best friend's marriage, and I don't fucking care what's going on in Johnny Depp's marriage. Seriously, like, I really don't. I didn't know that was the name of his wife. I think I saw on the cover of some of the shitty magazines they're still trying to sell to old people when you go to the market. I saw them on the cover of it a couple of times. That's how I knew there was a problem.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I'm more bothered by us as a society sitting here hanging on the swing back and forth is the he said, she said about two consenting adults that are in a marriage and what happened between them. This is not like Harvey Weinstein. It's not like, every other thing that we've talked about so far. It's very much something that he said, she said between a man and a woman. And just the idea that they're bringing it to the public forum for us to all weigh in when we literally know less. Every single person that's being told about this knows by definition less about it than him and her. So, like, there's this decaying orbit of like knowledge or anything to be gained by it. It's like it's all just coming from, I guess, some type of a soap opera-esque need to be part of the drama. Like, I couldn't give less of a fuck about what happens between Johnny Depp and his wife. I don't wish anybody any harm on either side, the same way I don't wish any harm to anyone on any side. I don't want anybody getting hurt or anything like that. I'd like to think that my friends who are married have a good marriage, but if I heard something, if I heard tomorrow, I'm not going to put too fine of a point on it, but just we're sitting here having this conversation. Like Blake, you're married, I'm married. If I heard tomorrow that you and your wife had a problem, like, okay, that's none of my fucking business. And
Yeah.
I'm not going to sit here and somehow pass judgment on, well, I heard this from this person, so maybe he did do this, but then she said no, so maybe she, like, that back and forth. It's not like I don't care about you or your wife. I don't fucking care about this situation. I got enough shit to care about. And if I'm not going to be invested in the back and forth between someone that I'm willing to sit on a phone call for 17 hours and talk fast food with, I guarantee fucking you, I'm not going to give a shit about Johnny Depp and his wife. Like, I just couldn't care. And that other thing that you guys said, that Fantastic Beast, I don't even know what the fuck that is. So there it is.
Okay.
It's probably one of those fucking knockoff versions of, I don't know, is it like somewhere between Lord of the Rings and the Hobbits and the Harry Potter, all the magic, sorcery shit? Like, I'm not down with any of that.
It's a prequel. Yeah. It's a prequel series to Harry Potter.
And
fuck all that. There.
And basically the Crimes of Grindelwald is basically if they went, what if we made Attack of the Clones but worse?
Jesus. I tried to give, because I've never been on board with the sword, like the sorcery type of shit, the magic stuff. So like I tried to watch the first Lord of the Rings. I fell asleep halfway through it. Then my friend wanted me to come with him to see the second one. I had no fucking clue what was going on. It was pretty, but I didn't know what was happening. And then about 2 years ago, I was at home, and I want to say Amazon Prime uploaded, or Netflix uploaded all the Harry Potter movies, and I could not get through the first one. So I read what happened in the first one and tried to start the second one. Somebody's like, oh no, you got to wait for the fourth one or some shit like that. I'm like, yeah, no, you don't get that much. There's way too much to watch for me to invest more than 2 hours to get on board with something.
I just love how the question was, do you think Johnny Depp is a bad husband? And you went from that to, I fell asleep during Lord of the Rings.
Here, let me ask you guys a question, okay? Just if you'll indulge me, give me a yes or no answer, okay? In all seriousness, all kidding aside, do you guys think I'm a good or bad husband? Do you think I'm a good husband?
Yeah.
Okay. Bottom line, you have no fucking way of knowing that any more than you know whether or not Johnny Depp's a good husband. So why are we talking about this? Like, there's no way to know that. My guess is that Blake's a good husband. Like, I would guess that if you got married, Donnie, you'd be a good husband as long as you don't screenshot certain segments of a conversation and post it like a fucking child. I mean, you'd be a good husband, I would assume. But, you know, you guys don't know that I am or not, and I don't know that Johnny Depp is or not. And all those things have one thing in common. I don't fucking care about any of them but mine. Let's move on with our lives here.
Okay, so before we move on, Tate, what do you think of Amber Heard and Johnny Depp?
I don't know. I hope.
I'm sorry. Easy, slugger. Easy.
I hope both of them burn alive in a fucking tire fire. How about that?
I just like Tate. I totally see what point you're making, and I don't think you're wrong.
That's good.
I just love the fact that. Do you think I'm a good husband? Yeah. You don't know that.
I can proudly and passionately and truthfully tell you right now, I am okay.
Yeah, man. I'm known as C+ above average. Tate Griffin.
I do know one thing. There was a Facebook Live you did where it was just you and one of your daughters driving around LaVale, I think, and you're doing drive-through, but you're just hanging out. It was like a Friday, Friday at like 4:00, and you were just driving around. It was a sunny day, and it was just a dad and his daughter just hanging out, talking in the car while they were just on Facebook Live. And I'm like, you know what? That's fucking awesome. I hope one day I'm hanging out with my daughter like that.
Yeah. Well, and she's sweet. Her twin sister that I murdered 10 years earlier wouldn't shut the fuck up. So, yeah, when they're nice, you can do that kind of thing. So, that probably wasn't funny. But I'm laughing. It's so funny. So that's like that's 66.6% of the audience here.
But
I appreciate it, man. I do.
Absolutely. And two more responses to that. What? What did I say? What?
Just go ahead.
Go ahead.
When you say who fucking cares, why are we talking about it? That's kind of the fucking point of us being on the podcast right now, Tate.
Yeah, I mean, I hear you, like the cancel culture, but I guess the aspect of the cancel culture for him was that he's being fired for things that they haven't proven and in fact have proven that he didn't actually do. I guess that's my fault. I got a little off topic. My focus was, why the fuck do we care about what's going on between a husband and wife that I don't know and have never met? Yeah. I guess that's my, especially when it's this he said, she said, back like, that's National Enquirer type shit. I don't know. That was my opinion on it.
But I do think you added to my point about how you're like, this is fucking nothing like the Harvey Weinstein situation. That was kind of my point, which is like, all these people are trying to jump on this, been like, where were you when there was like, all multiple people calling out one person, like.
Sure.
Yeah, exactly. Like, no, this, again, all these dudes, they're all about F Amber Heard, but like, okay, well, why didn't you have anything to say about Kevin Spacey or Roseanne or, like fucking real shitty shit.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. No, I totally, the hypocrisy runs wild on the internet for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I 100% agree with you.
Yeah. No, it's fucked up when apparently the rule is that a woman lying about a guy being an asshole is worse than all these guys actually being assholes, apparently. So that's fucked up, but no.
Yeah.
I'm not playing that shit.
Hey, by the way, I got to just say real quick about being a good husband. I've been with my wife for almost 25 years, and I just still feel like somehow, despite the fact that she is so much smarter than I am, I just keep trying to pull the wool under her eyes. Every morning I wake up, I'm waiting for her to be like, the jig's up. I'm just waiting for her to wise up.
My wife has a chemistry degree and works in a laboratory, and I'm like, wow, I must be a genius because I tricked her into marrying me.
Yeah, dude. And every day you're just like, shit, she's gonna figure this out. And I think to a certain extent every husband feels that way. And if they don't, then they're even shittier.
Yeah, like
Well,
she,
I'll let you
she's
guys
been-
know. I'll let you guys know when I get there.
Just quit screenshotting, Donnie. Just quit screen fucking shotting, okay?
Jesus.
Oh wait, that
Christ.
wasn't you. I'm sorry.
Um,
Hey, I only fucking know about it because it was on the internet.
I mean, you're not wrong.
Yeah, it's it's funny how when you throw shit out on social media, you gotta, like we've been talking about, you throw shit out, they can come up.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm sorry. And by that, I'm of course referring to the McDonald's app because I got two Big Macs the other day and had them remove the superfluous second bun, and I had a quad Mac.
Oh, hey, wait, great. Hey, thanks for bringing that up, Tate. I think Donnie has something to say to you about quad burgers.
How do you, Donnie?
Yes, you do, Donnie, don't you?
Do I?
Yeah, it's something about fries and quad burgers.
Oh yeah.
and-
Like okay. This totally flew over my head when we did the podcast about fast food. And
Okay.
but like, you remember what you said about Five Guys? How you knocked some points off because you said they gave you too many fries. But then,
Did I knock points off?
I mean, you definitely talked about it in a negative sense about how they give you too
Yeah,
many
yeah.
fries.
I usually throw fries away. Yeah.
Yeah, and you were like, they give you
Yeah,
too many
for
fries, but then
fries.
like several minutes later, you're giving a loving soliloquy about the quad burger from McDonald's and how you eat 30 sliders from White Castle by yourself. But you're gonna
Dude,
talk about Five Guys giving you too many fries.
Yeah, you know why? Because there's a big fucking difference between burgers and potatoes. It's like comparing. I'm serious. Like comparing potatoes to burgers, as was once said by, I believe, our friend Jeff Ross, is like comparing a turd to a sunset. All right. Anyway,
I'm canceling
motherfucker, what's the next thing?
All right.
Please, let's move on and talk about the next bad person.
Yeah, you guys, can you tell we're in the second hour? I'm getting all agitated. and shit.
Well, here's a fun one. This will definitely, I'm sure, relate to me and you, Tate, more than it will to Blake. But let's talk about some like personal experiences we might have had regarding cancel culture. And I mean, the reason I say
Like that time you got kicked out of a theater and weren't allowed to perform in there for a while.
yes, and I'm not gonna
okay.
name the name of the theater because it is a nice theater, and you know I think the owner of it is awesome, and I totally understand me getting kicked out.
I
Was,
Good.
I just want y'all to know I'm over here with my hood up like Darth Sidious, like, yes, let the hate flow through you.
like I totally understand my being banned temporarily was a matter of business, not anything personal. But at a certain theater not too long ago, I had a set and I made some jokes that didn't land well, and the result was the audience threw a fucking fit over it, and I wasn't allowed to come back for several months.
Yeah.
And it's like, my thing is, when you hear about cancel culture and PC culture, it's often conservative types that talk about it in a very mocking and negative sense, saying how liberals don't know how to take a joke and stuff like that. But oddly enough, the only place where I've ever been banned from was in a very, very conservative town. And I mean, I'm just going to tell you, I'll tell you the jokes I'd made. The problem was that I used the word retard several times, but I didn't talk about, anybody who with mental disabilities, or I would never do that. Never. I was talking about anti-vaxxers and flat earthers because let's face it, those people are fucking dumb. And I called them retarded, and that got me banned for several months. And like the further like illustrate my point about how it's often conservative types bitching about this stuff, kind of how the bully on the beach is the first to cry when a sandcastle gets kicked down. This incident got brought up at a friend's wedding shortly after the incident. And, one of my friend's dads was like, how'd you get banned? And I told him why. And he goes, I didn't know there were that many liberals in this town, in that town. And I was like, that's just it. I was the liberal. Like, that's the ironic part.
Maybe the part that they actually got offended by was that they were flat earthers and anti-vaxxers.
I mean, that's the only conclusion I can come to.
And then my favorite part about the night in question was how you made a joke, basically, and I'm not. Anyway, basically, the point of the joke was you made fun of the town for being rough. Like it's a rough town, and someone in the audience goes, and unironically, without sarcasm, I guess, being like, I'll fucking kick your ass after the show. And I'm thinking, wow, gee, thanks for proving his point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Where am I at? I mean, I don't know what to say on that other than generally speaking, I feel like it's not a conservative or liberal problem. I think everybody, not everybody, but there's plenty of people on both sides of the aisle and all sides of the spectrum, both ends of the spectrum, that want to be offended and want to be bothered. And again, it's like humor. It's subjective. I think you have every right to say what you want to say. And, I mean, unfortunately, like I said earlier, you also got to take the consequences. The consequences in this situation was being banned by the theater. It's funny, though, too, because, when you have like a small place like that, I wonder sometimes if they have to be even more dialed into the audience. Like you got somebody like James Gunn and Disney. Disney's not going under if they make the wrong call on whether to keep or fire James Gunn.
Right.
When you have a small theater that holds 200 people and they have, 150 people in the room, and you've got, 25% of them saying that bothered them, it's not just, it's about making millions. It's making money. Sometimes it's about, okay, how do we stay afloat?
Exactly. And I mean, that was, like I said, that's why I understand me getting banned was a matter of business, nothing personal.
I would also say, and I don't remember how many times you've been there, or if that was your first time or second time, I would also argue in that particular case, only because I'm familiar with it, that the biggest misfire isn't so much what you said, but not being dialed into that crowd to know that it wasn't going to work.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's no way you're a mind reader. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, I think that's, I mean, you answer it yourself. Do you feel like you learned anything from that in terms of the right audience for the right thing? Or is it just, fuck it, I'm going to say what I want to say, even if I hate it? Like to me, if and I'm not saying that I'm right, I'm not saying that you'd be wrong if you disagree with me, but to me, it's like, and I've been in a situation where I've said maybe something that was offensive to the group and realized sometimes you have to play to the crowd a little bit if you want to be able to get the capital to be able to be there again, or be able to get better, to be able to perform. I don't think that that's necessarily selling out or, selling your soul for or somehow compromising your art. I think though there's a lesson to be learned in, on some level, making sure that you're meeting the audience. Like, I've been promoting wrestling for 11 years and almost 12, and I have the right to go out there and say whatever the fuck I want about whatever I want, but I also recognize the audience that is supporting it, and there's certain lines you just, if you want to stay in business, you gotta stay within the confines of. If that makes sense.
Like, I don't disagree with you. I see where you're coming from. And I definitely think at the very least it was a good practice in, I guess, like you said, being attuned to the crowd. But my thing is, in this instance, there was absolutely, because I know what you're talking about, like in terms of, in this particular instance, me like not being dialed into the crowd. In this particular instance, there was no way at all for me to know that like the people that were in the crowd were in the crowd.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. And I didn't mean to insinuate that somehow you knew it was going to go south and you didn't care.
Right.
I mean, that's the whole point. We all got to try it. I was out at the casino, the Bonkers Comedy Club, and there was like 350 people out there. It was the last time I was out there, and I told a blowjob joke, and it died. And people were like, "Oh, well, that's not funny." Like I heard them; they were right off of the floor, and I look back, and I'm the feature for a headliner that traveled, 12 hours to be there, and they're watching, the promoter's watching, a whole room full of people. And I'm like, okay, look, I'm really sorry I lost you guys. Like, I immediately backpedaled, apologized, and tried to get him back with something. I was like, you know what? I tried it, and it didn't fucking work. And now I know.
And I mean, I agree with you in the sense that, like, doing stuff like that isn't selling out. But at the same time, we were kind of talking about earlier, like setting precedents. And I feel like, I agree with you that, this whole thing is on the both ends of the spectrum. Like, everybody just wants to be offended about something. And it's kind of like, at a certain point, do we go, people need to learn to take a joke?
Yeah. I mean, I would say that the line falls somewhere in between. People need to take a joke and people need to learn how to tell them.
I mean, yeah, like we said before, you got to be more clever than mean.
Yeah, and I think that night there were enough people in the crowd that felt that you were more mean than clever.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying they were right or wrong. I'm saying that there was enough people in the crowd that felt that way to speak up. Right. And in an odd way, to their credit, they didn't wait till the next time you were there and throw a shit fit. They said something that night.
Yeah.
They didn't, fucking boycott the theater. They didn't, they didn't try to cancel anything that had anything to do with you.
Right.
They spoke their piece, and that was it.
Right. All right, then. Well, let's move on. Make this the last one since we're getting pretty late here.
I mean, you guys, whatever you got, man, you lay it on me. You don't have to do it. I'm just kidding around. You don't have to cut it on my account.
All right. Well, then we'll move on to.
We'll move on to number 47 of 183.
No, there's only 3 left on the list.
Let's hear them.
All right. Well, we'll move on to an incident.
Did Blake just hang up? He's like, fuck this.
Blake.
Yeah. I'll be right back.
Where are you going?
All right. Well, he could just be the last to answer the next one. What do you got? Dead air's a fucking killer for podcasting,
right? Well, I'm going to talk about Kevin Spacey next, an incident where the person who apologized actually made things worse by apologizing in a way. Kevin Spacey, back in 2017, somebody came out and said that when they were 14 years old, Kevin Spacey had drunkenly...
Okay, I'm back.
Well, welcome back. We'll talk about Kevin Spacey. Back in 2017, someone came out and said when they were 14 years old, Kevin Spacey had drunkenly made sexual advances toward them. So, obviously everybody's like, holy shit, that's, creepy and gross. And Kevin Spacey's response to this was, he apologized, said it was wrong, but at the same time, he said, I have decided to come out and say that I am a gay man. And it just really, the way he worded it and the way he structured his quote-unquote apology, it sounded like he was basically saying, I did this because I was gay. And it just really, like, it just made it seem like he was saying, I went after an underage person because I was gay. Or I am gay, I should say. And
so he demonizes this orientation,
right,
by blaming, in a roundabout way.
I mean, this whole thing has given me probably my most popular stand-up bit.
threw his own would-be community under the bus.
Yeah, and like I said, it's a weird incident where the person who apologized dug their hole deeper by apologizing.
Yeah. The only thing I have to say about that, mine's short and sweet, is I'm not dialed into this. It's funny how much crap I got on the podcast to talk about fucking hamburgers and French fries, but didn't get a cheat sheet on this. I don't know. I don't know what he said, and I'm not doubting you. I'm just saying I didn't read it, so I don't know how much of what he said is actually what he meant, or how much is inferred by the media and twisted by the idiots that are on Twitter and all that shit. Like, I'd have to. I don't really. I'm kind of with Blake when the Apu situation. I'm going to have to just step back, and I don't have an opinion on that because I don't know enough about it.
Blake?
Okay. Well, one, his behavior towards, whoever, came forward was wrong. His apology was fucking tone deaf. Like we've said, like he demonized his own orientation and threw his own would-be community under the bus. It was just like, and it was such a slap in the face and a black eye to the LGBTQ community in Hollywood, because it was basically like the worst kept secret forever that like Kevin Spacey was gay. It's just a lot of people knew that for such a long time, and it's like, when's he going to finally come out? When's he going to finally like step forward? And that's a double-edged sword in and of itself, because it's like, well, that's his fucking business. He has the right to come out whenever he wants to come out.
But then
Just
he chose that moment to come out.
Yeah, you're getting ahead of me. Like I was getting there, but like just like how there's always been this rumor that like Tom Cruise is gay and he hides it, and it's like, shame on him for not coming out. And it's like, okay, but like, doesn't he have the right to come out when he would want to come out? If he is, like, that's his right. Like, why would you want to take that away from him? That's not for like us to own. That's for them to own. But then, like you had said, Donnie, like Kevin Spacey finally comes out and it's like, man, fuck you. Like, you finally do it, and this is how you do it.
Yeah.
Just shitty. Now, moving away from Kevin Spacey and to those that were, immediately jumping on the fuck Kevin Spacey train, a lot of the reaction towards him was, in hindsight, sexist and homophobic, because, every time a woman comes forward and, says, this man did this to me, they always get like, well, why didn't you come out and why didn't you come forward sooner? Why are you talking about it now? There's always this sense of disbelief, this sense of doubt, this sense of like uncertainty. But when a man comes forward to accuse someone, it's like everybody was just immediately ready to take it as fact. Like, oh, wow, I can't believe Kevin Spacey did that. But with all these actors that are accused by women, it was like, oh, are you sure? Like, are you being paid to say this? Like, why are you talking about it now? So, like, he was kind of fucking indirectly misogynistic in a way that, people were ready to believe a man's accusation quicker than they were willing to believe all these women's accusations. And then also, it was homophobic in a way that, like, when we hear about all these like straight actors fucking up, we're always like, oh, we got to just give them another chance, or we got to allow people to grow. Like, people make mistakes, or like, oh, but I really like him, I hope this isn't true. But with Kevin Spacey, once again, people were immediately like, oh man, fuck him. Like, what? And I'm not talking about you, Donnie. Like, you were able to look at it from all angles, but like, I couldn't help but notice that people were so ready and willing to sharpen their pitchforks and light their torches against a gay man than they were against all these straight actors when they were accused.
But okay, so the beginning of what you said, like him doing that, if we did that with a 14-year-old kid and all that, like, if all that's true and that's how that played out, like, yeah, I agree with you 100%. It's a horrible thing, and you didn't say anything that I disagree with. I'm with you 100%. My thing though is like, I feel like even as big as social media and the culture is, and as fragmented as it is, what you're saying, and please correct me wherever I'm wrong here, but I feel like it is so subjective. Like when you were saying everybody was, that's so quick to, dismiss like a woman or dismiss a straight man saying, oh, let's give him another chance. These people, now everybody's willing. I feel like that, is it possible that that's an unfair generalization? I mean, what senses have we taken as to who's speaking up for one versus the other? How much of that can be manipulated through the algorithm and social media and the media in general, and what you might be reading versus what I'm reading versus what any, like, and again, I already admit it, I don't know anything about this story. It feels like there's plenty of room there for error to say, well, when it's this, when it's X, everybody's saying this, whereas when it's Y, everybody's saying this, and it's like, who's everybody? Like, and who's like, are we talking about the same 10,000 people, or the same 1 million people, or the same 50 people, or are we just talking about vocal people? I mean, they can't, with all the money in the world and all the connections, they can't get the fucking polling right on the national election, beforehand. They, they fuck it up almost every 4 years now, and you'd think they get better at it, and it seems like they get worse. So the idea of saying that something that's as loose in terms of being able to actually objectively measure it and say, well, everybody's here on, if it was a straight guy, like, oh, we're all going to say let's forgive him, whereas if it's a gay guy, we're all going to say, maybe that's true. I'm curious as to how anybody can definitively feel that way.
And that's the unfortunate thing when it comes to this. There's no one true very way to poll this fray, this arena in pop culture. And I think that's a very great response to what I just said. Basically, like, my single scroll through the Twitter timeline shouldn't be held up as what everybody was saying. I get that. I think you're right. I agree with you. I think what also speaks to my point, though, was how immediately he went away. Like, Mel Gibson is still around. Like, how many fucking times were we asked to forgive Mel Gibson for shit, and he's still around? Like, no, like, Kevin Spacey's exile was very fucking swift. Like, he was replaced in an upcoming movie that he was going to be in, like, right away. There was almost no debate to be had.
Like 3 weeks before the movie came out.
Yeah, well, and I mean, I think that there's just playing devil's advocate, I think there's a difference too in the time from the time that Mel did what he did and the time that Kevin Spacey did what he did. I think that we're a lot more, as a culture, maybe self-aware. I think the Me Too movement, things like that, are a little more in our shared culture right now and in the zeitgeist, as opposed to when Mel did what he did. And it's apples and oranges what they both did, but I mean, I was there real time. Mel Gibson was banished for a while. I remember, I can't remember how many years it was, but I know it had to be at least 3 or 4 or 5 years before Mel Gibson. I think it was Robert Downey Jr., who was somebody else that had been forgiven by Hollywood for all the shit he did, was like, okay, guys, I think it's time for us to forgive Mel. And like, brought him out on stage on one of those award shows. Like, yeah. I would suggest that, like, he definitely went away, and I don't know that Kevin Spacey has been gone as long as Mel was. So I don't necessarily think that Kevin Spacey isn't coming back. Maybe he's still in the purgatory stage. I don't know. But again, I'm not criticizing anybody that does. I don't usually dial into the give and take back and forth of the drama on that type of stuff. Not to say it's not important. I don't follow it. So the fact that he if he did all those things and it all played, like, if it all went exactly the way you're saying it went from your point of view, if that's all legit and I have no reason not to believe it, then I'm 100% on board with you. I agree with you on every single point.
No, and I think even your counterpoints are decent. And I like that you brought that up. I think as time goes on, that Robert Downey Jr. stunt for Mel Gibson will age horribly, because it was frankly a tone deaf false equivalency. Like, Robert Downey Jr. was self-destructive. He battled addiction. Mel Gibson blamed all wars in the world on Jewish people. Like, that, those are like different things, like, on Robert Downey Jr.'s part. So I always found that to be horribly, tragically, a false equivalency.
Well, I would throw this out, though, is when Mel did that, he was intoxicated. And that doesn't excuse it, but it does indicate that the guy had a problem of some sort. I would argue that we don't know either one of them, and he could have self-destructive issues himself. His just happened to be caught on tape. God only knows, during the self-destruction of Robert Downey Jr., things he said or did that weren't caught on tape. I would argue that, for all we know, they're a lot more similar than we could know, because we're really only exposed to the part we we heard, you know.
That's fair. Yeah.
Well, let's move on to our next example, Roseanne. So Roseanne had put out a tweet. Basically, the tweet said, Muslim Brotherhood and Planet of the Apes had a baby equals VJ, which a lot of people took to mean Valerie Jarrett, who was a former advisor for President Obama. And it was seen as pretty racist. And Roseanne's response first was that she thought Valerie Jarrett was white. And then she tried to say that she made the tweet while she was on Ambien. And I mean, the result was that, because the Roseanne sitcom had just been revived, and the result was that Roseanne was fired from it, and they changed the show to The Connors, and she hasn't been brought back since. They killed her character off due to an opioid addiction, and Roseanne still tries to assert that, it was a political joke, not a racist one. And it's just like, come on, you called someone who was black an ape. Like, don't...
So she did admit that the initials were who she was actually referring to?
Yeah, because she straight up said, "I thought these are her words. I thought the bitch was white."
Well, then also like that, the tweet that she got in trouble for was in a series of tweets where she was already talking about her.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there anything that indicates that? I mean, again, I'm just asking questions. Is there anything that indicates that she was lying about thinking she was white? The only reason I say that is because, again, that whole innocent until proven guilty, if there's nothing saying that she didn't know that, like if she's lying, okay. And I might even suspect that she is, but if we can't prove that she didn't think that, if there's a chance that she believes that was a white person, then it completely removes all of the racially charged part of the whole story. I mean, to me, it comes down to, did she think she was right? Because I'm not saying it's still not a shitty thing to say, and I'm not a fan of her politics in any way, shape, or form. I mean, you guys probably both know that. But if she didn't, I mean, if she went back and said, "Oh no, I did," or I mean, if there's anything that says, no, that was all a lie, or anything where she indicated earlier, or hell, a picture of her posing with a lady, and just anything in the world that says she knew she was. But if she didn't know that she was an African American, all I'm saying is that removes the racial portion of the charges against her. I mean, could we agree on that or no?
I mean, when you say that the Muslim Brotherhood and the Planet of the Apes having a baby looks like someone, can you really remove the racial angle at all? When you're saying an entire ethnicity plus monkeys equals this?
I mean, if she's saying that, I don't know. I'm not going to. I don't want to be in the position of defending her. All I'm saying is that and again, I'm not a fan of her politics at all.
Tate, for whatever it's worth, and this isn't me trying to like interrupt you or get you to stop or anything. I've brought her up. She, in my opinion, she looks African American. Like that's I don't think Roseanne can bullshit her way out of that.
Like, okay, so what I'm saying though is that, I mean, there's I would say there's an argument to be made, and I'm playing devil's advocate here, but if there's an argument made that, somebody hears, especially, again, maybe an unfair generalization, but when you're talking about people in Hollywood or people that are kind of out of the loop, I hear people's names of people that I have an idea who they are. I know, for example, Lindsey Graham, I could not have identified him in a lineup 4 years ago. And, I had read this or that, something he had said. And just as an example, I didn't know when I was younger, like I heard shitty things about like Newt Gingrich. I didn't know what he looked like. And then I saw what he looked like. I'm just saying, is there an argument to be made? Obviously, if she saw her, then yeah, that pretty much ruins it. I was just curious if there was a chance that she said something about her without having ever laid eyes on her. Well, or thinking she's someone else. I mean, if she's saying, "Oh, I thought she was white," not saying that makes it okay.
Yeah. No,
at the same time, you're still flushing somebody's career down the drain here. It seems like something we should make sure. That's all.
Yeah.
I no, the whole point of her tweet was that she was. I mean, it's like when you asked, maybe she wasn't sure what she looked like. I mean, the whole point of the tweet was that she was mocking the way she looked. Like she
Yeah.
was being like, I've seen what she looks like, and this is what I think she looks like.
And that's
like
even and that was even a argument that Roseanne tried to use to defend herself. Was she said, I'm sorry I made a bad joke about her politics and her appearance.
Oh, okay.
So
I mean, yeah, I mean that's shitty. Ultimately, no matter what she said and what she meant, I mean, if it was offensive and shitty, whether it was racial or not, her employers have every right in the world to fire her.
Yeah.
Her what?
I mean, her employer has every right in the world to fire her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the last time we were all talking, like I think, just leave it at that. But I think all three of us have things that we probably don't want to talk about because we don't want to put our outside lives in a situation. You know what I mean? Like, I mean,
Yeah.
that's everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it first of all, tasteless, distasteful,
Sure.
shitty of her and it opened up a conversation that I think we've kind of sort of referenced here a few times. I think you almost brought it up, Tate, and you touched on it, Donnie, was I heard once again, the defense of her was, oh, she was only fired because, she was expressing a conservative viewpoint. If your entire political ideology is just mocking the way someone looks, it's a pretty shitty political ideology. But anyway, I'd
agree with that.
I saw this argument, and I've seen it before, and finally when this happened, I had a real response to it. But I saw, liberals can't take a joke, and especially the one was liberals just can't handle the opinions of others. She was fired over an opinion, and to that I was like, there's a difference between, I listen to a genre of music that you don't like the sound of, or I root for the sports team that rivals your favorite team or your hometown. Then there's like serious things and beliefs like, you think other people don't deserve to have the same rights that you have enjoyed your entire life because you were immediately born with them, or you're going to compare someone of another race, religion, or region to an animal. Like, those are more than opinions. That's not a matter of opinion. That's a matter of morality and belief. And you should be extra responsible for that.
No, I'm with you. I mean, I've always assumed like her views are conservative. Or she claims them to be. She claims to be conservative views. I have a lot of conservative friends. I have a lot of conservative family, and I don't think I have any of either that would somehow condone a racial slur. I mean, I think if that's in fact what she claimed was, and again, I don't know how much past that she did. I know if you're tuning into Fox News or wherever, and both sides of the fence do it, and both gaslight all the time. But if you got these pundits, these talking heads on there saying, she was just basically giving a political opinion, it's just trying to muddy the water. If you look what she actually said, it was a racist. If that's in fact what it was, and she has no way around it, and that's what she said, then it is what it is.
It's also like if you wanted to give a nuanced and elevated like political counterpoint to like whatever your argument was to her policy, like she did not accomplish that because she just made fun of how she looked. Like how's that an intelligent argument against her?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, it was I was calling her out politically. It's like, no, you were mocking her like appearance, her physical appearance. Like, where are you going with this?
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, I'm with you. I mean, again, if you're, especially it being in a racial way, that's at the end of the day, it's ultimately going to be up to the people that employ her, and they made their decision and they fired her.
Yeah, and as far as people realizing shit aged poorly, just imagine John Goodman looking at Roseanne and being like, who is this person that I thought was cool 30 years ago?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, here's the thing, boys. Make no mistake, Roseanne was a fucking hilarious stand-up. She was groundbreaking. Whatever she is now.
I remember watching the sitcom like as a kid, and enjoying it, even as a
Do
kid.
well. Do me a very small, minute favor and Google first Johnny Carson appearance with Roseanne Barr. I mean, that was groundbreaking. I mean, there was nothing like her before. Fucking smart as hell and quick, and there's a reason why she rose to prominence. I mean, everybody. I'm not defending her. There's a lot of people that I think had amazing bodies of work and then do something terrible or horrible, and it is like Chris Benoit.
Yeah.
I mean, he was in my top 10 of all time, and I haven't watched a match in I don't know how long it's been. It seems like it's been damn close to 20 years.
Yeah.
And I don't watch it, with Roseanne. I'll tell you another example of that was like Mike Tyson. I had a chance to meet him about 3 years ago, and it was a fairly reasonable fee to but I thought, man, Mike Tyson, he served his time, but he's a convicted rapist, and I could not justify spending $1 to meet or support someone that's a convicted rapist.
Right.
He paid his debt to society. Like he's, I'm not standing in the way of him doing what he wants to do with his life and him moving forward and hopefully, being a better person and blah, 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 all day long. Like we all make mistakes. We all do that. And he paid his debt to society according to the laws that we all live by. But for me, I thought, man, that would be so cool. I've been fortunate to meet a lot of people that, grew up watching or even idolized and thought was really, really cool. But I couldn't justify that. But that's just my decision. I'm not telling anybody else what to do.
Right. Well, then let's move on to our last example for the evening. J.K. Rowling. So
I basically boycotted her for writing all those fucking books. Fuck all that shit.
Well, recently, this past summer, J.K. Rowling on Twitter, she took exception to the phrase people who menstruate and basically responded to it with, oh, you mean women? And basically started this snowball effect of her thoughts on transsexuality and transgender people. And J.K. Rowling, she stated, if sex isn't real, the lived reality of women globally is erased. And J.K. Rowling basically tried to say that, the only people who menstruate are women, and also that she also tried to say that basically, she put out like a giant essay as well to try to defend herself. And she said, as a survivor of domestic abuse and sexual assault, and she went on as her experiences in adversity that were related due to her being a woman. She basically said, when you throw open the doors of bathrooms and changing rooms to any man who believes or feels he's a woman, then you open the door to any and all men who wish to come inside. And she basically said that counting trans people as women, basically, she tried to insinuate that it erased her experiences as a woman. And I mean, it just caused a lot of people to take offense to it. And the worst part of it is she doubled down. She not only doubled down on it, she tripled down on it so hard. Like she just got very very snide with, I guess you can call it, with a lot of the people who were criticizing her on Twitter, blocking them, getting like a very mocking tone and demeanor with it. And it's like, at first I wouldn't say I tried to defend it. At first when she said, when she took offense to the phrase people who menstruate and tried to say, these are my experiences as a woman, and, saying that any man who feels like he's a woman is a woman diminishes my experiences as a woman. I don't think she's right. To me, trans women are women, and they face adversity for being trans as well as for being women. But J.K. Rowling also, she said, I love trans people. I fight for their rights. I support them in their rights. And I think that's true. But at the same time, I think she's dead fucking wrong in what she says. And I think also it really came off as like, what about me? And it's like, girl, you've made your money. And it's like, yeah, you faced that stuff and it still happened and it still means something. And it's still great that you managed to accomplish all this despite facing all of that. But like, what do you lose by trans women being counted as women? Like, it's still kind of an ongoing thing, and it's a real shame to see somebody who for so long has kind of been like a figure of, you know, inclusivity and, you know, treating everybody who's different with the same respect, to like just seriously drop the ball on this. What do you guys think?
Tate?
I mean, I don't know. I feel like there's a whole lot of inferring going on here. If she's had this long tenure of, if she has this long tenure of supporting the community and all that, like, and then she basically voiced her opinions and her views based on her life experiences. And then people challenged her on it, and she doubled down on it. Like, was she supposed to roll over and say, "Oh, no, I don't think that"? I mean, one thing about it is when someone says she doubled down, like, oh, she doubled down on that. Oh, she came down on it 2, 3, 4 times, whatever, 6 times. Okay, everything she says is under this big magnifying glass to everyone in the world watching. God only knows how many horrendous, shitty things she was sent that she read and ingested before responding. It's not oh, I said this, then somebody said something back, so I said this. It's not a back and forth like you and I are having a debate and it's getting ugly. She says something, maybe I have no clue, 100,000 messages about it? Maybe she read 100 of them, 50 of them. So, somebody sent her the cliff notes on the shittiest ones. Like, I don't know. I don't agree with pretty much anything that she was saying in terms of her views, but I 100% back her right to express them, and I don't blame her for not backing down when people are telling her especially if she came back and said, that hey, I still support these people. I feel like it sounds like, from what I'm hearing, she's almost pigeonholed into this idea that she's dropping the ball if she's not saying and doing exactly what's expected of her, and then being kind of pigeonholed into this idea that her views are very one-dimensional. Where if this is all through a tweet, I mean, I don't know. Did she have like a 15 or 20 minute like discussion, like, to the audience, saying this is how I feel and all that? Not that she owes anybody any of that.
She put out a 3,000. She put out a 3,000 word essay.
All right. I mean, and if that's how she feels, it's how she feels. I mean, to me, she didn't say anything racist, or she didn't say anything that's hate speech. She's allowed to have her opinions. There's all kinds of people that have opinions that I don't agree with, and I can honestly say I'll read the exact same amount of her books now as before this all happened, which is to say fucking none of them. And if somebody really is, to me, it's like, okay, if somebody's that offended by what she has to say, don't support her shit and don't be involved in whatever it is she has to say about it. I'm sure there's people that looked up to her and then were hurt by what she had to say, but I don't know. Without the specifics of it, I don't see how you can sit and you being any of us can sit and relegate somebody expressing their opinion. Like, if that's her opinion, no matter how wrong it is in the eyes of anyone else, it's still her opinion. Like, she has a right to have it. And what has happened to her? Did they like stop publishing her books, or
nope?
What's actually happened?
Nothing.
That's actually part of like the controversy about it, is like nothing has happened.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, because the bottom line is, again, from an outsider looking in on this situation, it seems to me, and maybe I'm 100% wrong, but it seems to me that nothing happened in the situation because there's a bunch of people bitching and nobody actually cares enough to not buy the Harry Potter books and all the shit that I'm assuming that's her deal, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, people are still buying it, so they must not have been that offended. But it's real easy to get on your phone and bitch. I'm not negating how much they care, but I am saying that if people cared that much, she would be out of business, and she's clearly not. So to that point, it's like, if it's not your jam, it's like what I said about Benoit. Like, if it's not your jam, anymore, or you're that bothered by it, I mean, that sucks. And it's shitty if she's that close-minded and, etc. Don't buy her shit. But how long is anybody going to spend dwelling on whatever it is she's saying? Like, I feel like there's this ugly life that it takes on, like people just waiting to hear what the next thing is, like it's a fucking soap opera, like it's Survivor, and you're waiting to see who gets voted off next. And I don't know, and I could be completely wrong. Like maybe I'm just too old. I don't get that fascination. I feel like it breeds a negativity that, like, okay, this person said some shitty things, and I looked up to her, and now she's saying these horrible, shitty things. Well, then it sucks, but there's people in my real life that have said shitty things, and you know what I do is I don't fucking talk to them anymore. Here's somebody that I don't ever have to talk to anyway. I choose to be very giving of. Like, she provides me books. My guess is her best books are already behind her. Seems like it'd be easier now than ever to just tell her to fuck off. I mean, I don't know. I don't mean to monopolize the conversation or sound too serious about it. It's like, if that's her opinions, that's her opinions. And we can all be mad about it or we can dislike her, but I feel like the longer people are like riding the wave of what's going to happen next, what's she going to say next, the more of a life it takes on, the less sincerity I see in the people that have a problem. For me, if I have a problem, I divorce myself from the situation that's making me upset and angry, especially when there's nothing to be gained from it. What the fuck's to be gained from trying to get into a Twitter war with a billionaire that wrote books that I loved as a child? And I'm honestly asking, like, what is there to gain from that? Right. If that's how she feels and she's going to double down on it anyway, then isn't this just like is that term like a diminishing return? Like,
right.
The longer you stay involved in this conversation, like with her, or the longer you're involved in that whole sphere of back and forth drama, it just seems like the less and less you ultimately as a person and a fan get to walk away with in terms of the positive shit. I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Donnie.
I was just going to say, I think, in terms of her doubling down and everything, I think the thing that she did that was like the ultimate, like, and for a lot of people at least, was like the ultimate backhanded move that she did was, at one point she like tweeted a photo of she was like wearing a shirt that had like a pun on it about witches. I forget what it said, but she just said, hey, I love this shirt I got, and she like tweeted a link to the store to buy it from, and this store is like filled with anti-trans people, like, merchandise. Like, they straight up have like a magnet and like coffee mugs that say remove the T from LGBT and stuff like that. Like, it's that was like the ultimate like backhanded final nail in the coffin for her.
She was sharing an anti-trans merchandise web store. It includes phrases like trans women are men, trans men are my sisters, transition equals conversion therapy, F your pronouns, and woman is not a costume. Yeah. The woman who runs the website is a founding member of an activist group called Get the L Out, which calls gender transitions, quote, a form of rape culture aimed at lesbians.
I mean, that's all super shitty. It's all super shitty, and I can sit here and tell you that there's no excuse for that. It's super shitty. That said, why is she still in business?
Right.
Because there's not enough people, even the people that say and play lip service to saying it's shitty, it's not shitty enough for them to get off the bandwagon. It's also not shitty enough for them to block her and get away from her and remove that shit from their lives. Like, there's no way in hell I'm going to sit here and say that's cool. It's super shitty. And what I do with people that do horrible, mean, hateful, vindictive, fucked up shit like that at best are ignorant to what actually happened. I mean, shit, does this woman get a shirt and tweet it and not even pay attention to the thing? That's the best case, is that she was blissfully ignorant to how hateful she was being. Mm-hmm. And the worst case is that she was purposely trying to hurt a bunch of people that have unconditionally loved her for decades. Like, she's somewhere on that spectrum. And no matter where she is on that spectrum, to me, it's like, well, then fuck you. I don't need you in my life anymore. And it's really that simple. There's so much more to take your time with. But yeah, no matter what she said, no matter how many horrible things she said, like, we all have a choice. Like, then leave her be and don't help her make any more money. But people aren't. I don't know. I wonder how much of it's lip service to, yeah, that's horrible. She did say all those horrible things. But there's no way to know, like we were saying before, but I'd love to know I'd love to see the Venn diagram of people that were outraged by what she said and bitching, and people that still are spending money that goes back to her pocket.
Yeah.
There's a lot of companies. I mean, I'm not going down the list, but you guys know as well as I do. There are companies that, people love and that tie themselves to that type of shit all the time. But, people still shop there. People still get their clothes there. People still eat there. People still do all that shit. And I don't know. It's just, I don't know how far we can go to sit and say, we being us as a society can say, oh, this is outrageous. Look what she did, or look what he did, or look what they said. And then, but still support it.
Right.
And, and I guess that's what I meant about it being like there's an insincerity or disingenuousness to it. Yeah, that's fucking horrible. If I was in the community of people that looked up to her and then found out that she did that, and she basically completely diminished and just disregarded my struggle by sharing those hateful things, I'd never fucking talk to her again. I wouldn't know what she said next on Twitter because I wouldn't be fucking following it to find out. Fuck her. But not everybody thinks that way, and the tail's wagging the dog.
Yeah.
That's just my opinion.
Yep.
Go ahead, Blake. Any thoughts?
I mean, I don't know how to follow that.
I'm sorry. I was thinking I was going to go last.
You set the standard too high.
I'm sorry.
No, I mean, like, it's shitty. And then, like, the doubling and tripling down on it. And again, like, did she, for her to accidentally share that website, that link that happens to be, during that time when she's already saying similar shit, like, that's a little too coincidental.
I agree.
Especially since, like, the website does not try to hide, like, the shit that it has on there. Like, it's front and center when you go on there.
Well, like I said, at best she was careless and ignorant. At worst, she's fucking vindictive and hateful.
Yeah.
She has soured her legacy. I mean, it's amazing. No, I mean, I have.
Is she? Let me ask you this: is she done with the Harry Potter stuff?
No, here's the thing. So they're currently making, the prequel series to Harry Potter, Fantastic Beasts.
That's what that is.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that's what that is. No, Fantastic Beasts is a prequel series to the Wizarding World of Harry Potter. It takes place like several decades prior. It has a young Dumbledore in it and whatnot. So anyway, she it's not just like based on her work. She is the primary screenwriter. Like, she's writing the screenplays for those movies.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have like a middleman screenwriter doing those films. She's writing the films now.
So let me ask you guys this question hypothetically. When that movie comes out and it makes more money than any of the other ones, if it did, I mean, then what? I mean, doesn't it speak to the disingenuousness of the people that wanted to be outraged? I'm not doubting that they were outraged or hurt, but not enough to not go see it, not enough to not go support it. If it bombs, then, I'd be like, you know what? That's what she deserves, because it is what she deserves.
Yeah.
But if it doesn't happen, I mean, it speaks to, I don't know, to me, I'm like, well, maybe these people are talking about being outraged more than they actually are.
There has only been 2 out of 5 movies released. First of all, the fact that there's like, you need 5 prequels to something is, I don't know, but no, I don't think. The next one would be the 3rd one, let alone the 4th one, the 5th one. I just think people are just going to lose interest in them. I don't think they're going to do well at all, honestly.
Do you think though that they're going to lose interest because they made too many and they dragged the story out too long, or directly because of what she's done? Like, will that have an effect?
A mix of
I know a
both.
ton of people that didn't go see Han Solo because they had a problem with the politics of her name escapes me. The
Last Jedi.
No, the executive producer, Kathleen Kennedy.
Kathleen Kennedy.
That seemed to be the buzz that I heard on the outskirts. Was there was a ton of people that didn't go see the movie. That movie was considered a box office bomb comparatively to the other Star Wars films. I went and saw it. I thought it was good, but I had probably a dozen friends that were like, I'm not going to fucking see it because of her, because of outside shit. And so I guess that's my point. Is do you think there could be a direct, like, I feel like the more it hits them in the pocketbook, the more that it can be proved that this movie did not do as well because of, as a direct result, if it can be linked to the shit she said and shared and the hate she apparently spewed, it just seems like that would validate the otherwise lip service of being outraged by what she said and did.
I think both will happen because also, like, the second film that came out in 2018 just did not receive good reviews.
Yeah. Do you think it's I know it's complicated, but it's like you got her saying and sharing these things that are considered pretty hateful, but it was also a full opinion. Like, right or wrong, it was, you guys said she wrote like a 3,000 word essay.
Mm-hmm.
She writes this full opinion on it. And do you think that carried a little bit of weight to why she's still making movies or still has a career, as opposed to Roseanne, who didn't actually express a real viewpoint, but just, made a racial slur, and then she lost everything? Like, do you think that there's something that feeds in the idea, well, this woman's articulating her opinion, even though I disagree with it, she's still expressing it more so than just saying, I hate gay people. You know what I mean?
Oh, to play devil's advocate, I want to ask the question, how many people actually read the full essay?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I'd love to see the Venn diagram on that. How many people read the essay versus how many people were bitching about the shit she said?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like we got to end on something funny.
I will. Well, as far as J.K. Rowling, I will leave it on. I disagree with her point of view strongly, and
I do too, 100%.
Yeah, so I want to leave it at that with her.
Alrighty. Well, we completed the list, boys. I don't know.
Somehow this wasn't one about food, but I feel full.
Actually, there's a plot twist. You're the last topic, Donnie. You're getting canceled.
Oh,
yeah.
Fuck no.
Next week it's the Blake and Tate show.
What'd I do?
Tater and Dot.
Yeah. You shared one too many screenshots, Donnie. Oh, that wasn't you.
God damn it.
Yep. You get blocked, motherfucker.
I guess I gotta grow up sometime.
Yep.
Guys, I really appreciate you letting me be on the show. It's fun.
Yeah, it's always
felt a
fun
little heavy-handed, but yeah, it was good times.
Well, we got multiple tastes, so we got to have some fun episodes and we got to have some heavy episodes.
Well, and I think too that my guess is that the three of us probably voted damn close to the same, and probably have for as long as we've been old enough to do so.
Yeah.
We probably have similar views on. I'm going to just make a broad assumption, but I'm going to say our views are probably very similar on social issues, on politics, on religion, give or take. And yet it just goes to show when you think you're going to have these three people that agree on everything. And, the more you talk, the more you figure out there's some little deviations, little differences. And
there's nuances.
And if the conversation makes it, serves as even an example that, just because we may be in a larger situation playing the same team doesn't mean that we always agree on all the same calls.
Right.
Yeah. I've always just simply asked for how, if you're going to disagree with me, then so be it. But you have to at least hear out what I have to say before you can actually disagree with it.
Sure, I'm with you.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's really fun talking to you guys, though. I enjoyed it. And, Anytime I come back, please let me know.
Yeah, definitely.
We're having you back for another food one. Don't you worry.
Great. We're going to let a fat motherfucker like you get away with only one 7-hour food cast.
You're the one who put the broccoli in the marshmallow salad. Now you're gonna eat the motherfucker.
Yeah. Well, we can have a guy to go to the doctor, and I got on the scale, and she pulled the it was like the old school one where you stand on it and they like pull out that little like ruler thing that measures you.
Yeah.
Like it unfolds and they lop it up to your head. And when she went to stand it up, she was like, "Oh, we're gonna have to get on another scale." I said, "I'm 6'5". It goes to 6'5", doesn't it? She went, "Well, yeah, you caught me. I didn't want to point out that the thing went to 6'5". It only goes up to 300 pounds." Like, yeah, super, thanks.
Donnie, if I can make a request, can I take us out?
Go for it.
All right. Well, everyone, thank you for tuning in and listening in tonight. I am BVJ. I am the wizard behind the curtain. You can find me online at Pukasaucy. Tate Griffin, he is the man in the mirror. You can find him within our accounts as well. And I want to thank my co-host, Don John. He is the boy in the screenshots.
Indeed.
Good night.
Oh, by the way, Donnie, I got my list of 10. I'll send them over to you.
Awesome.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye-bye.